What up? What up? What's up, guys? Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Make sure everything's looking good here on a Monday. Man, thumbs up in the chat. Shout out to everybody coming in the room. Shout out to all of y'all coming in after a long weekend. Hope your weekend was great. Hope y'all are getting ready to celebrate your 4th. I got a lot of things to get into today, man. I definitely want to recap the BET Awards. I was about to call it the BET Hip Hop Awards, but this was the BET Awards. In these days, you can't really tell the difference between the two. Excuse me. We got Dr. Dre, who won our greatest hip hop producer all-time tournament. I want to kind of break some of that stuff down as well. And Marsha Ambrosius just dropped that Casablanca album, which was totally produced by Dr. Dre. A lot of people are wild by it. I think the sound quality is great. I want to delve into my real thoughts on that as well. While we're getting everybody else in the room, a couple of moves were made in the NBA for those who keep track of those things. We got Klay Thompson going to the Dallas Mavericks. Got Chris Paul going to the San Antonio Spurs. And I was about to call him Paul George or George Paul, whatever. Paul George going to the Philadelphia 76ers. Shout out to all of our Philly people out here. What do y'all think about that move? You think that's going to be a major move? You think that's something that's going to actually shift anything? Man, I think salute to y'all too. Salute to everybody out there. Thumbs up in the chat. We're going to really get into it today. I want to talk about this Usher thing too. I know Usher ain't hip hop per se, but Usher does mean something to Black culture, urban culture, and he did receive an award from BET last night. None of us heard the acceptance speech, and we'll get into that part too. But as far as this NBA stuff, before we move on from that part of it, I think the most significant move here, well, there are two things. I think Chris Paul going to San Antonio is interesting. We'll see how that develops because of Chris Paul's age, his health, physically on the court. Because again, he's an older player at this point. But in a vacuum, that's a good look to compare him up, or excuse me, not compare, to pair him up with Wemby. That's a great look to compare. Well, I keep saying compare. To pair him up with somebody with the physical attributes of a Wemby and the youth of a Wemby. But we'll see how that goes. And you got Popovich as a coach. To have Popovich over there on that side with Chris Paul as well, it's very interesting. But again, a lot of that's contingent on how available Chris is going to be. The other thing that is contingent on health and how good a person is going to be is Klay. I'm really, really fascinated with Klay Thompson going to the Mavs. One thing is the fact that Klay's never gone anywhere. And I think that Klay, as great as he's been in Golden State, he's going to have something to prove to himself, to the NBA audience, and just overall to his competitors that he can actually play outside of that Golden State system and be successful outside of that Golden State system. I think another thing that people are understating is what's Steph going to look like without having Klay over there. Now, granted, I know Klay hasn't been the Klay that we know him to be historically over the past couple of years, but he's still Klay. He's still a guy that, if he gets hot, he can get hot. So I'm very interested in what that looks like for the Mavs and for him, just having him in that spot and in that role, and to be paired up with somebody who can actually create and deliver passes and just open shooters like no, not Jokic, but you know what I'm talking about, like my man over there in Dallas. Like it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be fascinating to see that pairing, and just even with Jason Kidd as the coach. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. I think that's a very, very interesting trade. And as far as Paul George, let me go back to Luka. Luka's going to be able to find the open man as he always does. I think one of the biggest issues with what Dallas experienced in the finals was they didn't have somebody that can knock down shots. And I think that hopefully with Klay being there, you're going to get that. Now, the only question is, Klay is a little bit older, but I don't think that Klay's ever gotten to the point where he just can't make open shots. So I do think that Luka is going to be helped by that. There was a lot of help needed in the finals, and I think that Dallas is that close to actually winning it all. I mean, we saw that. They need somebody that's going to be able to deliver on nights where the load is too much for somebody like a Luka and Kyrie and get some of that pressure off of them offensively. Now, as far as Paul George going to Philly. Philly's one of those teams, man. Philly feels like the Clippers. They're like one of those teams that's always had the personnel. It keeps adding on people, and it doesn't really make too much of a difference when they get into the hunt. I don't know. I know on paper this looks great. If we're playing a video game and you got Paul George, you got Maxey, you got Embiid there, and a host of others, this looks great. I mean, you're going to go out there and run the table. But in actual action, I don't know. I'm not confident. I'm not confident in the fact that this squad can actually take anybody over that hump. So, I mean, you guys let me know what y'all think. The Warriors are going to be terrible. Yeah, man. I mean, I think the Warriors are one of those teams that at this point, they're kind of looking into the lottery system, possibly. They're in a rebuilding stage. And that's fine. I mean, they had a great run. It happens to all the teams. I think that the Warriors, in my personal opinion, actually overachieved over Steph's career. I've always said I view Steph Curry as a huge overachiever. We knew Steph was good, but nobody thought Steph was going to be this good. And no one thought that Steph Curry was going to come in and change the way the game's played in the NBA to this magnitude. Because you look at the game before Steph entered and after, there's a clear difference. And I guess the elephant in the room is LeBron's son, Bronny, being drafted to LA. How does our LA fan base feel about that? Y'all think that was a great move? Y'all think that was a dope move? Is this a symbolic move? I think symbolically, I think it's great. And Usher even touched on it on the part that we could hear from his acceptance speech last night on BET. I think it's a great move symbolically to be able to see your son play alongside of you. My hope is, and I say this from the heart, my hope is that Bronny's able to go out there and be a productive player where he's not going to be criticized as, just a wasted pick to appease his father. I do think that there is a possibility that he could go out there and deliver. And when I say deliver, we're talking about a 55th pick delivering. Like, we got to look at what the productivity of a 55th pick player is in the NBA. And if he's able to be serviceable, give you a couple of minutes, pick up a couple fouls, give you a surge off the bench, whether that be defensively or offensively, I think that's productivity. But again, when your father's LeBron James, and I mean, there's unrealistic expectations that come with that. I mean, I hope people don't expect Bronny to be any form of LeBron James or the second coming of such. I hope that's not the expectation. And I think if the expectation is for him to be able to give you the minutes and the productivity of what a 55th pick player could give you, I think that's fine. But I know it's going to be a shadow casted, obviously, but that's going to happen anyway. If he went and played on a team that his father didn't play for, that would be there as well. So shout out to them. Congratulations to them. I mean, I do want to know what the the Laker fan base feels about something like that. And who do you think should have been picked over him? I guess that's the bigger thing. And the Atlanta Hawks, I mean, listen, man, we had the first overall pick. I didn't wear my Hawks hat for a reason today because I just don't know. I hear the guy we drafted is really good. Alex Starr was always the name that was rolling around. You draft a 7-footer. That is the rule of thumb when we're talking about overall picks. But from what I'm understanding, and I'm going to be honest, I haven't been in tune with this draft class like I have in years past. But from what I understand, this draft class is weaker than some of the previous draft classes. So, with that being said, maybe we did get a good pick. Maybe we got a bust. We're just gonna have to wait and see. I would have liked the 7-footer, to be perfectly honest with you, because again, rule of thumb, you go for size and height. You can't teach size and height. And I truly believe that unless we got a Penny Hardaway or somebody like that on our hands, that there's a reason why he didn't. I mean, the reason why he went first, and he's gonna have to prove why he's the first overall pick. I just believe that you pick size, and if for whatever reason that person in camp isn't working out or not, you're not seeing what you want to see, then you trade that number one pick or something to that magnitude. But we're gonna have to see. And JJ Redick, yes, he's gonna have a tough job over there in LA. He's gonna have to deal with all of the possible unreasonable expectations. I don't know what the expectations for the LA Lakers are right now from their fan base. I mean, respectfully, I don't view the LA Laker fan base like a Dallas Cowboys fan base. I think that they have reasonable expectations normally. The Lakers aren't going to go out there in years where they have no chance telling you that this is their year. So I haven't even heard that from the Laker fan base, that they feel like they do have the team that's going to compete for a championship. So I don't really know what the expectations are. But the head coach is always going to be under that lens. And that's not just the LA Lakers thing. That's a coaching LeBron James thing. And now not only are you, they said the notifications ain't popping up. Come on, YouTube. Got to get the notifications. Well, if the notifications ain't popping up, y'all thumbs up in the chat so we can get this episode circulating, because I'm about to get off the sports stuff. We're going to talk BET. Are y'all ready to talk turkey? Let's go ahead and talk BET. All right. Well, last night BET had its award ceremony, its annual award ceremony, and they were centering everything around the fact that they were going to honor Usher Raymond for his wonderful career. Now, man, regardless of what anybody feels about Usher's, where he ranks all time and this and that, I think Chris Brown's kind of taking a lot of his thunder, because Chris Brown is an incredible talent. But Usher's had an amazing career. I remember, man, Usher dropped in 94. I remember being in like 7th grade. I'm aging myself right now. But I remember when Usher dropped his debut album when I was in 7th grade. This is around the time when Immature was around. And he had Can You Get With It? It was produced by Devontae Swain from Jodeci. And he had talent. You could tell that, okay, this kid is something. And granted, LaFace Records was here in Atlanta, so we heard a lot of it. And we knew a lot about him. And he was always in circulation on V103. Shout out to V103. And to see his career continue to develop over the years, when My Way dropped, that's when he kind of really arrived as a superstar on that level. He continued on his career. Confessions dropped. Yeah, so many records sold. And he's had an incredible, illustrious career. Well-deserved honoree last night. And shout out to Usher and his team. I know they worked really, really hard. He had a lot to say in this acceptance speech, the part that we did here last night. But and this is not going to be a rant of talking about how bad the award show is and this and that. I want to start off by giving BET some level of grace, because from a mainstream perspective, what we see on TV from musicians and artists, or artists in the mainstream, we just don't have a lot to work with. And I know I've interviewed some artists that are out there. I was fortunate enough to do the virtual red carpet with the Grammys and whatnot. Made me look at the Grammys slightly different this year and speak to the Coco Joneses of the world, and some of the new faces that we see in music. So this is no knock to them. They're doing their best. They're trying their best. The music industry just doesn't put in the effort to develop acts to the level that we're used to, and to develop producers even, and to create projects, and to actually release and roll out projects in the way that we're used to. You'll turn on the TV now, and you're not going to be familiar with a lot of the faces you see or the songs you hear. because A, we don't listen to radio anymore. B, a lot of these songs just aren't as strong as some of the music from yesteryear. And C, some of the artists just aren't as strong as the artists from yesteryear. And not to say that those artists aren't out there and those artists aren't getting a shot. The music industry just looks different from an economical standpoint and from the actual consumer standpoint as well. We have so many options. We have so many choices. MC with the super chat says Usher has classic albums. Chris Brown doesn't. Usher's greater than Chris Brown. Okay. Jermaine Johnson with the super chat said, man, didn't realize just how bad stripper rap culture was. Every single rapper that performed were half naked, twerking. Every single one, no diversity, no creativity, no originality. Yeah, that's a thing too. Because again, there is music out there. We just got through talking about how incredible of an effort that Rhapsody just put out there. And, she didn't really get that much airtime. This is my thing when it comes to mainstream media and the conscious or the artists that take the non-popular approach. They use them whenever it's convenient. And that's always happened, to be perfectly honest. If there was a tragedy came up, some sort of injustice that came about that was a hot topic or something that people would be watching for and waiting to see, they would have Rhapsody on stage going out there giving one of her performances that would be highly, inspirational. But on an everyday, day-to-day, they're not going to put that on the stage, unfortunately. But going back to what I was saying, I want to build this real quick. Follow me real quick. And thumbs up in the chat so we can get some more people up in here. I want to build this real fast. It all boils down to the fact that we don't buy albums anymore. I think that when you look at the record business, and it was worth it for these businessmen or these people who were music businessmen who somewhat cared about music and cared more about business, or those who cared about music but had to take care of their business, it was worth it for them to spend that time on putting together a certain level of quality of an album, because they knew that if they put this album together and they rolled this album out properly and it got to the people, then the people were going to consume it. When you look at music, music is probably the only product out there that is essentially free. You got to just look at this unfortunately, from the business standpoint. I know we look at music as, our lives. It's the soundtrack to our lives. It's love as opposed to commerce. But if you're looking at it, look, Degree has a deodorant or whatever, and I'm going to just use a deodorant as a random example. You have a deodorant, you put that product out, get it in the shelves, do marketing on that product, and people go buy it. And you get a return from your marketing dollars, from your product cost, what it costs you to put it together, to distribute it, yada, yada. With music, you put together music, you pay people for studio time, you pay people for their services and creating that, and you put together these albums, this product itself, and you promote it, you market it, you pay to get it out there to the masses. And what exactly is the return now? Because the stream numbers are very murky, and no one can even really tell you how the streaming part of it actually makes money. There's no hand-to-hand exchange with that. And we're seeing that in these award shows. We're seeing that in quote-unquote music television. And I'm going to get to that in a second too. I saw October London, shout out to him, performing on the red carpet yesterday at the BET Awards. And his performance was sponsored by Nissan. Now, what does Nissan need to sponsor a televised performance for, you ask? And doesn't make too much sense to me. The commercials you would think would be enough, right? If you actually buy ad space during the award show, it's for the commercials, correct? How do you sponsor a performance? So they had October London singing in front of a Nissan truck. And that right there, before the show even started, let me know that, okay, well, they have a money crunch issue over there. And this isn't about really putting together an award show or a quality award show. It comes across as a cash grab. And that part of it is the fact that who in 2024 is BET to actually give out an award show? And who are they to actually have an award show and give out music awards? When's the last time you've actually seen music on BET? Has it been about 10, 15 years? I would say around 15 or so, right? So for somebody who's 25 years old, and some of you guys in the audience, 25 years old, your whole lifetime, for the most part, all you've seen on BET, Tyler Perry shows, reruns of Martin, reruns of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, who are they to tell you who's the best new artist? And who are they to actually tell you what's song of the year or anything of that nature? Now, I think that BET has a legacy that many of us remember that are old enough, where they were a place where you could get your new music from. They could launch an act. BET can't launch an act right now. If there was an artist that, like, what shows would they have to even launch a musical act at this point? What platform, if you will, would they have to even launch a musical act? Do many of you people even follow BET on social media? Do they even have a social media presence? Do they even have a YouTube channel like even this one where people even talk about music, which I feel like they could. And if they do, who watches that? You know what I'm saying? And so at this juncture in the lifetime or lifespan of BET, who are they to actually give you the year-end wrap-up of who did this, and this in music? That's one thing. And the other thing is the fact that they just need to turn into an essence. And what I mean by that, they need to just go ahead and do a BET festival and end this award show thing. There's no point. What is the point of a BET Awards in 2024? It's not going to be in tune with what's going on in music. And from what I saw, and even with the political skews that were going on in it, I mean, you had our vice president quoting Kendrick Lamar, "They're not like us." So it feels like at this point, the BET Awards is just being used as a tool to either sell product, sell likeness, get votes, if you will, in that sense, which is whatever. But it has nothing to do with the music at all. And I think the BET, as important as it is to culture, and I do think BET is important. That's why I even acknowledge this at this point. As important as it is to culture, I think the BET needs to go ahead and just hit the reset button when it comes to their awards show. I think to save some level of credibility of this brand and whatever's left of that, if you will, I think that they need to just do a festival, do a BET annual festival. They need to end the award show. I mean, it's no point. You don't know what's going on in music. And based on what you put on the stage, it's clear you don't know what's going on with music. Everything, in my eyes, and I'm sure that many of you probably agree, and if you disagree, feel free to say that in the chat as well. It seems to be very agenda driven. When we watched Usher's tribute, man, you're telling me BET couldn't get Mario, Sammy. I know a lot of people want to say Chris Brown, Neo, Trey Songz, even all these guys that came up, looking up to Usher, who would have been happy to pay tribute. You're telling me that all BET could get to pay tribute to Usher Raymond and perform his records were women? And I know, look, man, I know it's going to come across as whatever. I know a lot of people ain't going to go out there and say this and jump out the window and all of that. I think it's great that women are doing their thing in the music industry, in the world, and everything. Women work hard to get where they're at, and I'm glad they're getting their just due. There's many, many years where they weren't getting their just due. But and Childish Gambino did start off with "You Don't Have to Call," but Childish Gambino has been vocal about his gender fluidity, if you will. I think that if I don't understand it, I don't understand it. Maybe Mario wasn't on call. Maybe he wasn't able to do it. I don't know, but it's hard for me to believe that none of the male performers that we've seen over the years who have graced BET's stage would go out there and pay tribute to Usher. And all they were left with was a whole selection of nothing but women performers for one of the most successful male performers R&B music has ever seen. I don't know how Usher probably felt about it. Again, we couldn't even hear what he said in the acceptance speech, but that felt agenda driven, whether it was or it wasn't. When I saw Tiana Taylor go out there basically taking on the male role in their recreation of Usher and Beyonce's duet, if you will, aside of Victoria Monet, I'm like, oh man, this is something else. You're telling me they couldn't get another male artist to go out there and pair up Victoria Monet? So what we got and what the young people got to see weren't there with two women grinding on each other, as opposed to a man and a woman actually exchanging on stage, which is what Usher's initial record was for and what it was about. I know that BET went out there and apologized for, I guess Usher went out there and I guess I saw it. Usher went out there and dropped the F-bomb. And then after he dropped the F-bomb, they muted his whole speech, which I don't understand either. I thought that was still a technical issue because usually those award shows are on delay. And whenever somebody does something like that, and Usher is a professional, man. He's been doing this for over 30 years. For him to do that, it makes me feel like he didn't like what was going on or something. I know he was being real. I get that. But it was on his mind it sounded like frustration, if you will. It was on his mind to actually take this somewhere else. And when he did that, sounds like they punished him for it by actually muting the whole speech. So I don't know where that part of it went to. Seemed again like a technical issue, seemed like a purposeful thing. It reminds me of when Wu-Tang was on Good Morning America and they just start blanking out all of this stuff for no reason. And from what I understand, Usher was talking about Black fathers, Black fatherhood. The part I did hear, he did shout out to LeBron James and Bronny James for playing together. He spoke about his ex-wife, he talked about his kids, and those things for some of the things that we could actually hear. And I don't feel like he was happy with the fact that there was no male representation on his set. Think about it. How do you think he felt as a Black man in R&B, doing what he had done for 30 plus years now, having the impact that he's had and some of the trials that he's had to deal with over the years that none of the people that he came up rocking with, or the people that came up looking up to him, were able to actually honor him. Like, did he have a hand in who was selected here? And you would think that if they're going to pay tribute to you, let's just think about you in your life. If somebody's paying tribute to you, nobody's going to run by you who these tributers are, and you're not going to go out there, you or your team, kind of giving them some feedback, like, I would like this person to do this, this, and this. And for me, when I saw how Usher accepted his award, sounds like he might have been frustrated with some of those things, because it was very blatant that there was no male representation in his set and honoring him. And again, makes you feel like BET Awards, again, was used as a vehicle to push for an agenda. And whatever that agenda was, I think people can kind of take it for themselves and what they saw that night, because there was a whole lot going on. But just to save some level of credibility of the brand and let us have great memories of what the BET Awards and BET used to be, I think they just need to go ahead and retire the award show. They retired the award show. I mean, respectfully, nobody's going to miss it. I think that award shows in general are a dead dinosaur. Like it's a dead technology, if you will. I think that when you talk about maybe the Oscars and the Grammys, just because of what they do annually and what they mean to the establishment and what they have meant to the establishment, fine, you could keep those things going. Those things aren't really about the televised production of it all. But things like the BET Awards that, had a level of credibility at some point and never reached the level where, they had ultimate credibility. What's the point? I mean, it just continues to it continues to soil the brand. Really, you don't play music, so you're not in tune with the music part of it. You're not in a position to actually give us great moments because you don't launch acts. You're not going to be able to get certain acts that we're looking for and combine them or whatever for a historical moment like they were able to do with Michael Jackson and James Brown. Like, what are we really going to get from a BET Awards? And we even have a BET Hip Hop Awards coming up as well. And it's like, what are we going to get from that? Hip Hop 50 actually saved the BET Awards last year. And I remember that. And this year, they didn't have any of those things to save them, and they had to rest on their own morals. And it just lets you know it's just not a lot out there. And you're not, I could see it, back in the day where BET was able to actually help an artist, where BET was actually able to put you in position to actually sell a record. And again, we're going back to people buying music. Kendrick Lamar probably would have opened that award show with They're Not Like Us, which is the hottest song out right now. I mean, even the vice president's quoting it, right? Why didn't that happen? It was right there in LA, and it was being played all night. And he still didn't open with that. So it lets you know that even the biggest artists with the biggest songs right now, they're not even going to jump on BET because what does it really do for them? And they're looking at the overall show as well. So, and Kendrick won an award last night. He wasn't there. And when it gets to that point, what's the point? I mean, really. And I know BET is very important. It's important to me. I mean, it's been a part of my life, and even the way that I look at how you put on production. What's up, Ron? How you doing?
What's going on, brother? How you doing, man?
What's going on, man? What are some of your thoughts on some of the things I'm saying? Am I jumping out the window?
No, you're not jumping out the window, man. You got to look at, the BET. I didn't even know the BET Awards came on last night, right?
How would you?
I mean, I haven't been checking for the BET Awards, man. I would say for the last maybe 15 years, man. I can't. And you made some good points. I think award shows in general are dinosaurs. They're a dying breed. I mean, you look at the Grammys, you look at the Oscars, you look at the Emmys, look at the Tonys, all across the board, 40, 50%, 30% decrease in ratings. I mean, Soul Train Awards, BET Awards, no different. The celebrities and the stars are not going to these award shows anymore. And you got to think about it. Yeah, and when we were growing up, there's a couple of things that's happened. And the reason why this is happening, number one, as you said, the music business has changed, right? Music, you had to go to Sam Goody, you had to go to the Blockbuster, you had to go to Tower Records and purchase records. The rollouts were different. You had a promo run, you had 106 in Park, you had TRL, you had the show with Donnie Simpson, you had the BET runs, you know what I'm saying, to promote videos, and you had networks that played videos and played music. That's out of the equation. Now you have streaming farms. You have not streaming farms, but you have streaming platforms. Let me say, not streaming farms.
Yeah, those.
Flip. You got Spotify, you got Tidal, you got YouTube Music, you got Amazon Music, you got Apple Music. So in some way, we are paying for music because shit. I forgot I had Apple Music, man. I'm still paying for that. You know what I'm saying? So
the consumer is paying, and I think that's a conflict too. The consumer is paying, but obviously that money's not being trickled to the places that are actually producing the music in a way that they would like. Let's look at a Get Rich or Die Trying, right?
Right.
We're not going to get a Get Rich or Die Trying in this era because there's not going to be a label that's going to go all in on an artist and do a rollout like that because they know that there's not going to be a return. You know what I'm saying? Has anybody sat there and said, you know, this person's opening week, stream wise, was equivalent to what 50 Cent did on Get Rich or Die Trying on The Massacre when he went out there and sold 1.2 million in a short week? That's a lot of money for Interscope. You know what I'm saying? And that's going straight to Interscope for this individual project. And you can see those things, you can see those numbers, and you can allocate that budget and that return to that artist, to that project, to that rollout. You can't really do that with streaming. And again, you even have that middleman of Spotify or whoever, or Apple Music or whatever, that's right there. And really, it just seems like the streaming numbers doesn't seem like, based on what we're seeing in the music industry, the streaming numbers are just cosmetic. They're not actual figures.
Right. Well, I think one thing the record labels are doing, I don't have any inside knowledge on this. Say, for example, Drake stream or Eminem's new album streams like 100 million times in a week. Spotify will probably kick back, Interscope that ad revenue. So if you got the free tier of Spotify or the free tier of Apple Music or the free tier of Tidal, kind of like how YouTube does. The more you get, they play your songs or the records, they're probably kicking back a portion of that ad revenue to the record label. That's why they're able to pay Joe Rogan $200 million to do a Spotify podcast, because those ad revenue, you know, they split that ad revenue with them. So that's one way they're making money. But it's like, to your point, it's not the same. It's like physical copies of you can actually count it. It's not like the TRL days when, what did the Marshall Mathers LP do? Like 2.2 million the first week? You know, 2 million the first week, or was it 1.7 or something like that?
No, I don't think it was that many. I know the Eminem show was the one that did the biggest first week, but yeah,
right. But it's different. Like, you know, those pop groups like the Backstreet Boys, Britney, they were doing like 2 million, 1.5 the first week. But you know, another thing, Mike,
1 million in a day with no strings attached. That's crazy. When the music industry was booming, and you will put money into an act, in a project, or, you know, a rollout, and again, you would have notable faces. You couldn't, even if you didn't listen to NSYNC, you heard their music. You knew who they were.
Didn't you buy the album the first day, Mike?
I did not buy that album the first day. Now, I did buy the Marshall Mathers LP album the first day. I was tricked.
I was fun. But one last point on this award show. Another thing that killed the award show, and really all award shows need to be on social media. They need to be on IG. They need to be on YouTube, because back in the day, what the ladies wanted to see what the women wore. You know, the fellas wanted to see the women. You know, we wanted to see the hot artists, you know, the new artists like Kendrick, not a new artist, but the hot, you know, Kendrick Lamar should have opened the show. You would see somebody like Drake at these award shows, Kendrick. You would see up and coming artists. But now, since social media and YouTube, we don't need to wait to the award show to see what people are wearing, because they're posting pictures of themselves every day. So that kind of took the allure. That kind of took the allure of all the award shows, from the Oscars to the Grammys to the Emmys to the BET Awards to the MTV Awards. There's no point. People not running around the TV, gathering around like $9.99 when the MTV Awards came out, when people were just running home to watch it. We left band practice to go home and see it. It's just a different day and age with social media. So the allure of the star is dead. The star is dead, and the hip hop award shows could be dead. We're gonna bring it back though. Don't worry.
Music and television are just different anyway, you know. And I was watching one of those documentaries that's on what was that, on Hulu? I think it's a Vice documentary, but they talk about television in the 90s. And the numbers that they were talking about that some of these shows were doing, like the finale of like Friends and stuff, like 30-something million people watching one show at a time. Like, we're not going to get that again, where people are just centered around their television to watch, you know, as they would say on NBC, must-see TV. If you didn't get in front of your television and watch, you know, In Living Color, Martin, New York Undercover, when it was happening, you weren't going to see that episode. You know what I'm saying? Like, you go to school, you go to work, whatever, the next day, and want to talk about what you saw on TV. If you missed that episode of Martin, you missed that episode of Martin. You know what I'm saying? Unless you taped it or something like that. And it was a thing to watch something live while it was happening. And I think a lot of the award shows in that era benefited from that as well. Now, to your point about it being on social media, YouTube, whatever, when you look at that stage, BET is clearly trying to cater to a young audience. I mean, you can look at even their selections with who they had giving tribute to Usher and just everything else throughout the night. Young people aren't watching TV like that. You know what I'm saying? So to even have an award show, just to say, you know what, I'm going to have an award show and it's going to be on terrestrial television or whatever, you're catering to an audience that's like 35 and up already. Because young people ain't even sitting there watching TV like that. They're streaming things. You know, you got young people in your house. They're not even watching TV like that. So you're sitting here catering to people who don't even watch television. And so you're going to have to update your formula on that level. Like, is Latto's audience or Ice Spice's audience really sitting here watching television? Or are they going off doing something else? Or are they waiting to, like you said, they're on social media looking at, you know, whatever this person is doing? They're not going to sit here and watch a 2.5 hour award show. Why? Mad Max in the super chat says Ice Spice is better than Latto. Clear. See, that's that New York bias right there.
Yeah, Mad Max, I disagree, man. I mean, she looks better than Latto for sure, but I don't know if she can. I don't know if she can rap better than Latto, my man.
Nah, she can't rap better than Latto. I don't think she's a better overall artist than Latto, but I do think she might have a little bit more star power than Latto. Whatever. I mean, I could see that. But yes, I mean, and that's where I think they fail too, because they need to just go ahead. And I know nobody wants to admit that they're old, outdated. They haven't evolved to anything musically. No one ever wants to admit that. But I think they're in the Tom Joyner cruise stage. BET needs to go out there and do like a BET cruise or a BET festival in the way that Essence is done. Essence has gone out there and done it respectfully. They've gotten old respectfully, and Essence Fest is a place where OGs meet up, hook up, whatever. You know what I'm saying? You got OG acts go out there and everybody has a good time. There's no shame in doing that, BET. You're not going to cater to the youth. You can't cater to the youth. You have never played music in their lifetime. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all were talking about that Forbes list last week, and we went through that, and I was like, who is Forbes to tell you who the top 50 rappers are? That's how BET looks to a certain generation. They haven't played music ever in many of these people's lifetimes. Who are they to tell you that this artist is the best artist of 2024? Mad Max in the super chat says, looks better, raps better, makes better songs. I don't think she raps better. You really think that Ice Spice raps better than Latto?
No, but I will say she looks better. She does look better. That is true. That's very.
What do you think about? I don't know if you saw the Usher tribute, but what do you think about the fact that they had an all-woman tributing cast?
I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I think there should have been some male representation. You know, a lot of Usher's songs was about men, you know, trying to get with females and about love, the relationship between a man and a woman, and it should have been that dynamic represented on stage. I don't like the push. I think it was agenda driven. One thing that, you know, people say that women don't get their light, don't get their shine. I just don't think that's true, because, you know, women have been running the game for a very long time, all the way back from Tina Turner to Aretha Franklin to, you know, Shaka Khan to, you know, Jodie Watley, Janet Jackson, all of Beyonce, you know, you got Missy, you got Queen Latifah, MC Light. So women always been getting their props, you know. I just think that they're just trying to push a narrative now that, oh, we gotta really give women a shine. And it's just a false narrative, because women have always been, you know, especially in our culture, we've always put women on pedestals. We've always shown love to our women and celebrated our women. But I think it's a lie. It's an agenda-driven lie, for them to push that. And I just didn't like it at all. I just don't like them pushing, especially they're trying to cater to young folks, pushing this agenda. I don't think it did service to Usher's legacy. And plus the fact that Usher's like damn near a couple years older than us. I think you should only get a tribute if you like 55 or 60 or something.
Well,
I
he's
don't think
been
you
in the
should even.
game 30 years. He a little different though. I mean, Michael got a tribute when he was 40. He might not have looked 40, but
That's
when
Michael though. That's
I
Michael though.
agree, but I only say Michael because he started so young. Usher
Right,
started very young. Usher's not a regular 46-year-old. You know what I'm saying? Like
right,
he's been
right,
doing
right.
this for 30 years. Like, so I get that. Matt Max with the super chat says, the fuck is Big Mama Spice even better perform? Or is she the better performer, Big Mama Spice? Okay, I mean, I will give some level of pushback when it comes to hip hop, but I do agree when it comes to R&B, when it comes to the female vocalists, like you mentioned, Mariah Carey. Even if you look at the groups in Vogue, SWV, TLC in the '90s, very very successful groups. Escape. So it did feel like there was no. I felt like In Vogue was probably bigger than Jodeci. Maybe not Boys to Men, but right there with it. And I think Boys to Men, just because Boys to Men had End of the Road and stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
do get what you're saying there. But in hip hop, I will say that women have had to take a backseat in hip hop for a very long time. And again, the content that hip hop puts out there when it as it pertains to women hasn't always been in its best light. We'll give Dr. Dre some shine for that as well, and many others. But at the same time, it shouldn't have to be one or the other. It shouldn't be okay. Now the women are having their time and the guys are having to take a back seat, and it's like it doesn't really seem like it's genuine. That part of it, when you put together a performance like this, that's a little manufactured, because no one can sit here and tell me that Mario wasn't available to go out there and give tribute to Usher. And I say Mario because I think Mario's a dope vocalist, great performer. He added a lot to BET in its heyday in the 106 and Park era. And I would like to know from these guys, did you even get a call? What happened behind the scenes in putting together this tribute? Like, why was this thing put together in this way?
I think it's
Jay
probably put
Short,
together this way because it's terrible people that produced it, and people are not as smart as you are or as smart as I am. Put together these shows, they're out of touch with the general public. They're out of touch with the audience. If you look at their YouTube feed, like I looked at a Jeezy interview on Black Enterprise. Mike, you sent it to me about a couple months ago. They have 5 people in the room. These people are out of touch the way the new
Black
media works.
Enterprise, man. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
so these people are out of touch with the way things work. But that's okay though. That's why we need you to hit like and subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell because we're going to do our own award show and put them out the pasture, man.
I think an award show is
In a different way. We're gonna
technology.
do it. We're gonna
Else.
do it in a different way. We're gonna do our festival, and at our festival, we'll have the award show. We're gonna do something really fresh. You know what I'm saying? We ain't gonna do it the traditional way.
Yeah, I think there has to be some level of inner. I don't want to say too much because people steal ideas, but we'll work it out. Jay Short with the super chat. Shout out to Jay Short. I want to know what you think about Bronny joining the Lakers, sir. He says, I hate to say it, but a lot of artists in our generation dropped the ball. They valued the Grammy Awards more than our cultural awards. Did they demand BET Awards stickers on their album covers? I think that could have happened, but again, I think they're powerless in that sense as well. I don't think that artists aren't going to stand up too much. You don't have too many. Like, who was the last artist in music that was like, I'm going to go against the grain? I'm going to use my leverage for something cultural as opposed to use my leverage for something personal. Jermaine Johnson with the super chat says, Rhapsody was there, but they didn't have her perform. How is it that she is underappreciated and passed over in white spaces and in black spaces? Dang.
Well, see, BET is not a black space though. So let's just get that clear.
Well,
So,
it is, but it isn't. It's not a black
not
brand
a black
space or own space, but you look at those commercials, you look at the people they have hosting who could barely put together a sentence. Oh yeah, they're pushing to black
It's not
people.
a black space. If it was a black space, they would have diversity of black thought. It's not a diversity of black thought in those spaces. That's an agenda-driven platform. So it's not truly a black space. It's a black it's a black performative space, but it's not a truly a black space. It's for the culture. It's not. It's deceptive.
Well, I think the Rhapsody to that Rhapsody point, and I think Rhapsody makes quality music, but I don't think Rhapsody is entertaining enough for their stage. That's not what they. That's clearly what they're not catering towards. They're catering towards the Glorillas of the world. They're catering towards the Megans of the world, and and they do what they do. Sexy Red went out there and performed. I think that at least in years past, when even though it was all wild, but you would have BET have like some hardcore rapper go up there and perform where they have to edit out most of their words, and then Yolanda Adams would come out after that and perform. I think that there's enough diversity in music now where you could still have Rhapsody go out there and perform after a Megan performance. I'm one who sat here on this platform and believed that I don't see why Rhapsody and Megan Thee Stallion or Rhapsody and Cardi B can't collaborate, make a song together. Now, that's not something you put on BET. That's something you put on the labels. You know what I'm saying? And whoever works out those things behind the scenes. Because isn't Rhapsody still managed by Roc Nation?
I believe so.
And I believe that Megan's managed by Roc Nation. So why aren't they doing a song together at least? That right there helps both artists, I think. It helps Megan not be viewed as just someone who's a one-trick pony on her end, no pun intended. And it makes Rhapsody, open to Megan's audience that might not be totally aware of what she's doing. Now, will they like what she's doing? Who knows? Jermaine Johnson with the super chat says, so the owner of BET is not a black job.
I don't know.
That's a loaded question.
That was a good pun, Mike. She should name her next mixtape that One Trick Pony. Megan Thee Stallion. That's pretty dope. One Trick Pony. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and what I'm saying, and diversified, because I feel like Megan's more than what she presents. I know everybody wants to see, a Rhapsody on that stage, but that's just not who they're catering to. That's like back in like the 2000s or whatever, you wouldn't see Slum Village on that stage, and that's okay. We never expected to see Slum Village on, the BET stages. And unfortunately, they just use the Rhapsodies, Black Thoughts, and people like that whenever they want to look cultural or whenever something bad happens. You know what I'm saying? Like whenever there's something bad that happens in the Black community, some disparity, somebody was treated unjustly, then now we got to call Chuck D. Now we got to call Rhapsody. Now we got to call Black Thought on stage. Unfortunately, it's all for ratings. And in their mission to chase ratings, it has continued to affect the quality of the product that's on the screen. But saying all this to say, young people that they're trying to cater to don't watch television. People have so many options when it comes to their viewing. People have such a short attention span. They're not going to sit there and wait for commercial breaks and watch your 2.5-hour award show. And there's no credibility there. I mean, why would somebody 20 years old watch the BET Awards? There are people that they love never deemed those awards important in the first place. They don't even watch the Grammys.
They didn't watch the Grammys. We don't want to beat a dead horse, but yeah, Jermaine Johnson, we did get you. I got what you were trying to go there, but we're gonna talk about rap music today. We ain't gonna talk about the debate. There's a show. One of our affiliates, IL. He has a political show called Families in Black Politics. If you want to check out his show, he'll give you some of that analysis on the debate. But we're gonna get into Lupe in a minute, Mike. What you trying to do?
I want to talk about Dr. Dre real quick, man, because I know over the weekend you guys talked about some of the new music that came out. Shout out to Leroy, he's gonna be here in a minute. We talked about the Lupe, and we'll talk about where Lupe is all time. But did you listen to Casablanca, the Marsha Ambrosia album that was totally produced by Dr. Dre?
I heard bits and pieces of it. Again, man, I've been ripping and running. What I did listen to was a Lupe, but I'll let you. Trevon was on the show Saturday, and he talked about it. I know that Leroy talked about it. I know you listened to it, but I did not get a chance to get into it. Servon said he used a lot of samples. Dr. Dre was in his sample bag. I think he sampled New York State of Mind. I think he sampled Real Love by Mary J. Blige too. I heard he did that.
A lot. Every song on there is a sample or remake.
So yeah, speak to the album, because I've been dealing with some family stuff. I hadn't had a chance to listen to it, but cook it up.
Well, I want to start off by saying this: Dr. Dre won our producer tournament bracket. So, in the eyes of the public, he is the greatest hip hop producer of all time. Now, this is him doing an R&B album. Now, maybe this was lingering in my head because he was working on this album during the pandemic, during 2020, and he made a post, and Dr. Dre rarely makes a post. He had like a full orchestra in the background. He said, I'm working on this Marsha Ambrosia album, and it's the greatest album I've ever produced. So maybe that was kind of ringing in my head when I'm like, okay, I can't wait to hear this album and see what he's come up with. And so I listened to the album, and as expected, I'm going to start off with the highs. The sound quality of it is immaculate. Dr. Dre is, and I will say this, and it's not even just hip hop, I think he's the best engineer that we have in music in modern times. Everything's crystal clear, everything's crisp. The sound quality is a whole nother level. Now, I do love the fact that it started off with the MCs Act Like They Don't Know sample, the KRS-One record, the DJ Premier produced. Shout out to Mad Max. He says he shouldn't have won the bracket. We're going to get into that in a second. It sounded great because I know that, Premier's version, which bangs, man, like that's just like what, 30 years old now. I remember seeing KRS live a couple of years ago, and he played MCs Act Like They Don't Know. That shit cuts through in a live performance, and so does KRS's voice. And that beat, though, but yes, Dre's version, it sounds even better from a quality standpoint. I ain't even saying it sounds better than Premier, whatever. It's a great remake, and it's a great opener for the album. To me personally, I think the writing kind of suffered on this album. The cadences are very Dre-ish, or maybe they're very Marsha-ish, because maybe Marsha Ambrosia does a lot of writing for some of Dre's, more recent vocal work on some of his records. I'm speaking on the Compton album specifically. And I was like, okay, this is a great opener, right? Boom, MCs Act Like They Don't Know sample. Song 2, then you got New York State of Mind popping in there with the sample, okay? Song 3, I think that we got like an interpolation of Mary J. Blige. Song 4, I should have written all of these down, but it was just so many samples and remakes. I heard a Spodioti Doublelicious in there. We got 3 different records from Illmatic that were used. You got The World Is Yours was remade on there. New York State of Mind was remade on there. One Love was remade on there. And I'm like, yeah, this sounds good. And I see what they're doing to hit certain chakras for certain people. But this is very unoriginal for the greatest hip hop producer that we have. And I mean, some of these songs just sound like straight up remakes of another song where you just change the words. Like if I sat there and took the whole Billie Jean beat and the whole cadence to what Michael said on Billie Jean and just changed the words, which I think that was dope. And that's kind of what this album does in many facets. I was expecting some originality from our greatest producer, and the way that he, kind of prompted this album up a few years ago, saying it was the best album that he's ever worked on. Now, granted, I'm not talking down on samples. And Darren says I'm missing the point. I want to read what Darren said because I respect what Darren has to say. He says, Michael clearly missed the point. The samples were part of the vision. It was merging jazz and hip hop with an orchestra. I understand that, and I see that, Casablanca and all of that. But I also feel like to some degree, Darren, that's a cop-out. It is, man. Like when it comes to being able to make something totally original, I'm not saying you don't dip into that bag for a few of the songs, but damn, where are the original records, man? And when she basically remade Visions from Stevie Wonder, and that's fine. But I guess I was expecting more from a totally Dr. Dre produced album. We don't often get Dr. Dre produced albums either, right? That doesn't happen all the time. So my expectations weren't to get basically a cover album where you're quote unquote fusing jazz, hip hop, and the orchestra. Like, come on, man. Puffy did that. You know what I'm saying? Like, where is the original music? And at a time right now where we really need some original music, covers are cool. And I say covers because it's what a lot of these records just were. Like, if you just go out there and take samples of Rick James, Mary Jane, and you take the whole cadence of how he delivered them and just change the words and say you updated it, that's cool, man. But I'm not going to give you album of the year for that. MC with the super chat says Marsha's album will be appreciated 10 years from now. Will it? Because the songs aren't really original like that. No, we'll appreciate the records that he used. But I mean, I'm just saying, man, I'm saying something I guess other people aren't willing to acknowledge. I mean, it's like I said, I'm not knocking it. I look at it like I looked at Ashanti's Foolish. But, you know, the quality was just better.
Mike.
Yeah. What's up, Leroy?
I gotta cut it. I gotta just cut the line. What's up with
it? Yeah. Come on. What's up with you?
We're gonna discuss everything. I got a little pushback, right? And but Marsha.
Well, you speak highly of the album, and I'm sure many people in the chat do because it's Dr. Dre, man. You can't say nothing wrong about Dre.
Well, I mean, I listened to it, you know, maybe 1.5 times. I'm not the expert, but Marsha, and no diss to Marsha, I'm bigging her up. She knows that hip hop been holding her down. Like, who's been buying your records, Marsha? Hip hop treats Marsha as a rapper. We're the ones buying your records. So I appreciate her returning the favor because it's us that's buying Marsha Ambrosia. You know what I mean? So I appreciate her returning that favor. That's all. You get on all the rap hooks. You know you're singing. You know what I mean? I mean, come on, like. The rappers, hip hop, we hold Marsha Ambrosia down. Now I'm sure she's great in other spaces too as well, but hip hop's been an integral part of her career. Flowetry. Lupe's Fiasco. Lupe's album is what? Flowetry. That's all it really is. It's flowetry. It's not a rap album. So
man, Max with the super chat says Mike's telling the truth. The album was karaoke trash. Well, listen, man. I mean, it is what it is. Like
she ain't got
people you expect originality from, and Dr. Dre's one of those people. Kanye West is one of those people. I mean, am I really going to go back to this album, or am I going to go back and listen to New York State of Mind, or am I going to go back and listen to MC's Act Like They Don't Know? Now, I did, like I said, you can pull that trick out your bag a couple of times on an album, but the whole album. No, man, you got to let us know. You got to let us know that there's a theme coming. Like, this album's going to be hip hop themed or whatever. But yeah, man, when you're expecting all new music and I'm sitting here getting Stevie Wonder remakes and stuff, which, by the way, Timbaland sampled that joint way better on Genuine's I'm Sorry. I woke up this morning listening to De La Soul Is Dead. Yeah. And, usually when I'm hearing certain creative samples or original songs that I love from that sample, I'll go back and listen to the original. Help Is on the Way, which is with De La sampled, or Prince Paul sampled on De La's Ring Ring. Right. That song is fire. And I'm like, where did he go to dig for this at? Like, it sounds like a gospel record. Like, where did he sit there and hear Help Is on the Way and say, you know what, I'm going to make a De La Soul record from this? That's digging. Right. What Dr. Dre did on this album, he used all proven samples, the things that we used to criticize Diddy for in the 90s. He's using stuff that we already know is going to work, stuff that already has worked. I've criticized other producers for doing that on this show. I'm not going to sit here and be a hypocrite when Dr. Dre does it and think it's cool just because it sounds better from an engineering standpoint. He sat there and used stuff that we've already heard used. We've already heard these samples used. Go find something that you can use that we haven't heard yet.
I'm hearing used samples like the majority of songs, period. So it's
That's
like,
true. I agree, but this is Dr. Dre. All those people aren't Dr. Dre.
if y'all want original, then we gonna have to step far outside of the box of hip hop. But y'all don't want to.
No, we've always done that.
But Pete Rock is using samples on the Common joint. Pete Rock is using samples on the Common songs, but they sound a little bit. He's flipping them in a way that sounds a little bit more original, more creative than what Mike is talking to with the Marsha Ambrosius project.
It sounds like a 90s aesthetic, which I'm not mad at. But y'all don't want to step too far out of that box, and you know you don't because you're scared. So it's cool.
Well, hold on, Leroy. So you're telling me actually using hits from the 90s like a New York State of Mind, One Love, MC's Act Like They Don't Know, isn't using a 90s aesthetic? Yeah. I mean, all of the records, come on.
I'm saying the young women who are sitting down probably going to listen to Marsha Ambrosius, who may not be all the way hip hop like that. When they listen to her album, they're going to be like, why is it so much hip hop? And they'll grow to love hip hop. The same way someone's going to listen to Lupe Fiasco and be like, why the hell is he singing like Amy Winehouse? Then they'll go listen to some other styles of music. So that's the trade-off. Like we got on missions. It's no more making music just to have a good time.
Time out. Is Marsha really like that though, where she got a fan base that's not that is not privy to hip hop? I feel like she's using the hip hop aesthetic to get her more fans as opposed to the opposite. I don't feel like she's the kind of artist that is like Eminem per se, right? I don't feel like Marsha's that kind of artist where it's like, yo, her following's not really, acclimated with hip hop like that. I got into hip hop from listening to Marsha Ambrosius. Come on, man.
I know. I'm under like we were talking about culture in the comments, and people are talking about this is not our culture, that is not our culture. If it's in America, it's our culture because that's where we live at. So if it's in America, you're not escaping it. Now that's one. Second, if Marsha Ambrosius has a bleed over into gospel music, those gospel fans may not be familiar with those samples like that. They know them, but not off by name. So you got the gospel listeners going in to get the Marsha Ambrosius, and they're going to be like, okay, now I'm feeling this hip hop stuff too, because I got that as part of the plate.
Mad Max with the super chat says, straight biting. Dre's supposed to be hip hop with this. Jay Short with the super chat says, Mike, isn't that what Mary J. Blige did in the first 3 albums? Her entire career started off as samples. The issue is Marsha is a good singer, but her voice is not really distinctive. Mad Max with the super chat says, Jay Short, relax. Mary J. Blige is from my city. Mad Max says Mary J. Blige did it better with new voices and vocal flow. Well, this is what I will say about Mary and what Puffy did with Mary. Puffy used Top Billin' and a little sample from that too, and used it over R&B. These are things that we hadn't heard R&B do yet on that level, right? Obviously, Uptown Records and things like that. Puffy had the insight and the vision to be able to have Mary singing over hip hop records and Biggie rapping over R&B records, right? And that part of it was creative. What we're seeing Dre do right now not only has been done, but he's doing it with records that have already been proven. Who would know that Top Billin' would work with Real Love? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a chance. You're taking a chance. And my thing is, Dr. Dre, you're our greatest producer. You're hip hop's greatest producer. Maybe not R&B's greatest producer, but you're one of the greatest producers of all time. If you're going to sample, where's the digs at? You know what I'm saying? Where is the, you know what? I've never heard that loop. Where did he find that at type stuff? And there's so much music that's even being made currently. Like I remember Scoop DeVille did the not Compton song. What song am I thinking about? The song with Kendrick and Dr. Dre. You know what I'm talking about. Shit.
I know the project.
The Recipe.
Okay, yeah.
that sample literally was like 1 or 2 years old. That made me go check for that artist that made that. Like, there's music being made all the time. So I don't want to hear that we run out of samples to use. When you're going back using a sample that Pete Rock's already used for The World Is Yours and New York State of Mind and using MCs out like that, it's lazy. And really, to be honest, the Stevie Wonder joint, I believe, is because Timbaland used it for Genuine's I'm Sorry. Like, all of this stuff has been done. And you can't just sit here and tell me because Marsha's singing on it and the writing's not that great on it, because she's singing on it, it's new somehow. It's not. Like,
hold on,
do
man.
the work, do the digging. You got all these samples out there, Dre, or, you know what I'm saying, all this access to music. Go out there and take a chance. None of this stuff was taking a
chance. When you're taking a classic loop, if a classic sample, if you mess that up, they'll never let you live that down. Now, second, are we fronting like Marsha can't sing out there in the streets? Is that what we're doing in the chat? Because I hear the Mary J. Blige talk, but we're not talking about Mary J. Blige's album. We're talking about Marsha Ambrosia. So are we saying Marsha can't sing?
You know the difference between Mary and Marsha?
Not talking about Mary.
No. I'm just saying. I mean, that's why people are bringing up Mary. I think Mary has a soulfulness that Marsha may not have. Now, I don't know if that, and you just spoke about America and culture and things like that. I don't know if that's because Marsha's from the UK and, you know what I'm saying, and Mary is from New York City. There's a different kind of flavor there going on. But I will say this, I could technically respect what Marsha does and vocally where she comes from. I'm not going to say she can't sing, but am I going to tell you that I feel the same way when I hear her vocally that I do, like when I hear Mary Not Gonna Cry or when I hear like Aretha Franklin? I don't.
We're not talking about
Mary. Music is not as soulful, bro. It just ain't. And that's okay.
Didn't drop no album. So so you're choosing to talk about Mary with no album.
Well, no, I'm using Mary as an example. You asked me why people are bringing up Mary and saying that Marsha can't sing. I'm not saying that Marsha can't sing. I think where people are coming from is they just don't feel her like that. And that's where the soulfulness comes in there. And I think she lacks that soul that some of her counterparts actually have, especially for somebody who has vocal talent.
I don't think you get in the studio with Dr. Dre, you lacking soul. As a singer, I don't think you make it that
far. Eminem does it all the time.
You make Eminem. I don't think Eminem makes it in the studio with Dr. Dre if he couldn't rap.
I mean, there's levels to this guy. There's levels to this guy. And Marsha Ambrosia is talented, right? She's very talented. Her album, I hear, is well regarded and well received. But Mary's on another level, guys. Let's keep it above.
We're not talking about Mary though. We're not talking about Mary, people. There's only one album we're discussing, and it's Marsha's. So I get it. If you don't like it, that's fine. But we're not talking about Mary. So you keep bringing up Mary when what album are we talking about for Mary?
I think Mike was bringing up Mary in the perspective of how the samples were incorporated in the production of Marsha Ambrosia's album. That's why. So we're not comparing. Let's take that off the table. We're not comparing Mary and Marsha, right? We're just saying the approach of producing the record. How Dr. Dre took samples that were used in the 90s that were already vetted, that were already ingrained and embedded in our culture, and it really wasn't a risk to that album because they were already been used. Now, some people in the chat saying that Marsha's been going on an interview run. I think Michael Brown's in the chat saying we may be missing the point and we didn't hear what the inspiration behind the album was. But what Mike's point is, he's taking samples. What Mike is saying, he's taking samples that have already been proven to be woven in the fabric of hip hop culture and reincorporated in 2024 on Marsha's project. And he thinks that's it's a cheat code, is what Mike is trying to say.
And I know people are going to go out there on their press run because they got to sell this record, and I get it. You're going to speak to those things, but it's cheap, it's lazy, and you can actually do those things without using proven records. I mean, I get it. I'm not going to sit here and say that makes it whack or that makes it bad, but I'm going to rate it on that scale. And if we're talking about somebody who is supposed to be one of our greatest producers of all time, this falls on him. You know what I mean? Like, to me, the writing on that album's not that great. that falls on the producer.
Mike.
Especially if we're talking about R&B production, because we always say this, Dr. Dre not a beat maker, he a producer. Okay, well, if you're a producer in the R&B genre, what falls under your umbrella is the writing of the project, the instrumentation on the project, the performance and execution on the project, the actual creativity in arranging this thing, and the engineering. That's what Quincy's role was, right? Quincy wasn't making this stuff from scratch. He had Rob Temperton over there creating. He had Bruce Sweden, who was Sweding, who was the engineer. He had a host of instrumentalists. He had a host of writers. He had Michael over here, and he was arranging all of those things. So if you want to be a producer in that facet, then yes, I'm going to have to judge this album based on all of those individual things. You say he's not a beat maker. People say he's not a beat maker. He's a producer. Well, this was your time to show that. And when it was time to show that, you used beats that were already hits, either in the streets or on the charts. And the writing is subpar. The writing,
get it, Mike.
The writing came across as amateur. It did.
If I judge music, if I like the Lupe album, if I judge music on the way I wanted, on what I expect, I would be talking very negatively. But I had to judge it off what I had, not what I want. So the Marsha Ambrosia album is what I got. It's not my album. It's like, that's one thing. Second, if I make an album and I sample Today Was a Good Day, The World Is Yours, and they're like, oh, well, these samples are already big anyway. Well, those samples had an effect on my life. So what are we to do? Like, am I supposed to not act like they wasn't there?
I think a good example of this is L's album. He did Illmatic. I think he did a brilliant job of covering Illmatic.
Okay.
He covered Illmatic. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's going to sit here and say, yo, that's one of the dopest projects of the year. No, you covered Illmatic. You know what I'm saying? Like, but technically, if we sat there and looked at it for what it was one of the dopest albums of that year, because he rearranged the instrumentation from Illmatic. He went out there and took these concepts and made them his own. He had Royce the 5'9" basically step in the Life's a Bitch role of AZ. Did a great job putting it together. It's a great listening album. Shot some videos and everything. I still listen to Illmatic. But you're not going to really rate it as anything because he didn't really create anything new. He covered something, which is cool, but we just got to look at it for what it is. All I'm saying is, for Dr. Dre to be the greatest producer we've ever seen of this era, I expect more from him from a creative standpoint than just going out there basically doing covers.
Well, I've never heard an album like that. Now, y'all,
I have.
Speaking of which, Dr. Dre did win our first attempt at a hip hop greatest producer bracket. He beat out KLC from the No Limit. He beat Large Professor. He also beat Daz, and he beat RZA, and then he beat Primo, and then in the final round he beat Kanye West. Now I would have judged about my vote. I had Kanye West winning the whole thing. I also can make an argument that Pete should have been in the quarterfinals. I think Pete got taken out by Jay Dilla. Well, that's a tough one. That's tough. I can see why Jay Dilla got through. But I would have put Pete ahead. But I think Kanye West, from an R&B perspective, if you look at what he's done and a producer, I think you got to give the nod to Kanye West. Because I did ask this question to you, Mike, a few shows ago. I guess it's Marsha Ambrosia, right? I guess that's his latest foray. But before this project, what was Dr. Dre's latest banger?
10 years. It's not his latest thing. She been there. She's on all.
I'm talking about Dr. Dre. I said, what was Dr. Dre before this project? What was Dr. Dre's latest, like his latest banger?
The soundtrack from the
Compton.
GTA.
Oh, I mean, listen, man.
Hey, man, only Dre could have made it sound the way it sound. Now, if people have an issue with it, that's okay. But only he could have made it sound that way. Like anybody else would not pull off that album. They can't. It's too
This
many.
is how I feel. Oh, Jay Short with the super chat says, I think after Pete Rock and Common album comes out, we're gonna have a discussion. This album sounds really good so far. This looks like it could rival B. Now this album sounds like it's coming together.
Yeah,
Great.
Jay Short, who's been saying that on this podcast for the last 2 months? That would happen to be me.
Pete Rock are
I agree 100%.
They say I'm on the take, but I'm just keeping it real. 4 for 4. 4 for 4 records. Trying, Wise Up, the new joint, and Dreaming. 4 for 4.
I actually like the new joint. I was listening to that on the way home today. I was like, oh, this is actually dope, man. Like they're coming. It sounded like a very dope album song. But I want to get back to Dre because I understand why people have Dre as the greatest hip hop producer of all time. I mean, he was here for a very long time. His impact is, uncanny, to be perfectly honest with you. But his highs are higher than damn near everybody. But we don't judge Dre from beginning to end. You understand what I'm saying? I think we judge Dre from the peak. We do that with RZA too. And I try to check people when it comes to that as well. We judge RZA on the peak. We don't judge it on the totality. And I think when you start judging on the totality, things kind of look a little different. But I will give people this, man. Dre at his best, nobody's beating that. What do you look for in a hip hop producer? And I was looking towards this album because I thought it was going to be that opportunity to provide evidence to show that, you know what, he's not just a beat maker as people say he isn't, right? He's somebody that can arrange. He's somebody that can do a full out production in a Quincy Jones type of format, because that's what he always compares himself to, or people compare him to in the hip hop sense. And here, all he did was take the great loops from the quote unquote beat makers and engineer them well. That's all he did.
No. Here's my issue with producers. Love the producers, but here's my issue with you. Producers make a beat and go, here's the beat. My job is done. That's not production.
I feel like that's what he did on this album.
Here's a bit. No, when you listen to Dr. Dre, it's not just a sample. It's live instrumentation. It's a whole aesthetic of like an old classic Hollywood roaring 20s aesthetic to the sample that's added on top of the sample with the live instrumentation. Can't nobody do that, y'all. If you make a beat and say,
Kanye did it. Come on. No. Kanye did it. He does it. He's done that throughout his career. Kanye's done that and done it better.
We're not talking about Kanye West.
But we're talking, you said nobody, and I mentioned somebody who did.
Kanye is sampling the most famous samples, and we're giving no headache for that. But Kanye did not add the same amount of aesthetics as Dre just did. He did not do that. He did not do that, bro.
What Dre also does
on all of the lights. Okay.
What Dre also does, and I got to give a shout out to my homie Will Corbin, man. I remember when I heard, we heard Justin Timberlake's Suit and Tie featuring Jay-Z back in the day. He was like, Mike, this song sounds overproduced. And I laughed because I never heard anybody call something overproduced.
Right.
But when I listened to that Dr. Dre Compton album, I understood what overproduced meant. And some of these songs on here feel slightly overproduced as well. Now, we get a lot of that going on today. Now, granted, I mean, in Dre's defense, but I do think that, sometimes there is a level of minimization that could happen for the sake of music. And when you say nobody's putting all these things and this and that, I mean, it's not always a good thing. Some of these records are overproduced.
I said I know an overproduced album, Mike, but I'm not going to talk about that today. But you guys know an overproduced album too. But it came out in 2012. But go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. It happens.
Let's show over the super chat. It says, Mike, most people on the West Coast already knew this about Dre. He really does not have a lot of versatility. We've been saying that DJ Quick is better as a musician. Okay.
Dr. Dre doesn't have a lot of versatility. It's like the stuff that y'all say sometimes, I get it, but it's like Dr. Dre doesn't have a lot of versatility. Okay.
Well, I mean, I can see somebody saying that because he has a sound. Yeah, I mean,
you guys are talking about producers. Make a best engineer list, because that's the list Dre's on.
he's at the top of that.
Talking about
Well,
he's at the
is
top
he
of that.
technically an engineer? Does he have is he hire an engineer to do the engineering?
Good question. Let's ask. But
Drake,
even if he does hire an engineer, Ron, I will say this. Let's just say hypothetically, Dr. Dre has an engineer, unless it's the same guy throughout the years. I will say this: his stuff that comes out with his name on it is engineered to a level that we don't hear other stuff being engineered at. So he does make a difference, whether he's engineered with this person or another person here or another person here. I gotta say he is the common denominator. Now, if he has like a Bruce Sweeten or something that's been working with him his whole career, that's something different. But I feel like Dre is the engineer. That's his gift.
Yeah, that's his gift. His gift, the engineering. I understand the beat point, and I can respect that. But his gift is to taking a beat that already exists and making it sound different. That's his gift.
I think he might possibly be the greatest engineer. I mean, I would have to look at a whole list, but off the top of my head, Bruce and Dr. Dre probably the greatest engineers that modern music has seen. Now, I will say that. I'll give him that undoubtedly. Now, as far as the producer thing, I think his engineering skills and his level of engineering prowess actually trickles over into how high we hold him as a producer. The L Web with the super chat says Dre's been using the same tired piano loop for over 20 years. He's very overrated. Let's explore that. Should he have won this tournament? I want to start with you, Ron.
No, I think let me pull the list back up. I think Kanye should have won in the finals.
You think he should have beat Premier? Let's back up.
I mean, Premier did some work on Jasmine Taz. He did Hard to Earn, Step Into the Arena. Moment of Truth is one of my favorite albums of all time. He did the Rakim records, When I'll Be on the Mic. He did New York State of Mind 1, New York State of Mind 2, Memory Lane. He did some work with Christina Aguilera. He worked with everybody.
No, let's talk hip hop.
I'm just saying he's done some work with Z. He did a song with ASAP Ferg, The Streets. He's worked with everybody. I would say
if
that's
Primo,
a tough one. I would say it's a tough one. I think Primo's had a longer career he's had a longer run than Dr. Dre.
Do you think that would you feel comfortable with DJ Premier's catalog going song for song against Dr. Dre in a 20-song matchup?
I would feel comfortable with that. I don't know if Premier would win, but I would feel comfortable. I wouldn't be scared going into a 20 for 20 matchup. I can pull 20 records to give Dr. Dre a run for his money. I can take New York State of Mind, a record that Dre just sampled.
Here's why Dre wins. Dre could get a beat from DJ Premier, meaning Dr. Dre didn't even press no buttons on that beat. The beat already came done. Dr. Dre is going to take that beat and make it sound like a totally different monster. That's why Dre wins.
That makes him better, though?
Yes.
Because it sounds like the creative work somebody else did.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question, Mike. Let's take the peak of their powers, right? Not the peak. So Moment of Truth came out in 1998. And I believe 2001 came out in 1999. Mm-hmm. Now, this is a good question. To me, I'm just in my personal opinion, I listen to Moment of Truth more than 2001. What's a better album top to bottom? Moment of Truth or 2001?
Top to bottom is Moment of Truth. But again, just like we do with everything else with Dre, if we're talking about the highs, it's 2001. Again, and I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a microcosm of how we view Dre. The first half of 2001, incredible, untouchable. But when you look at it from end to end, it's not Moment of Truth.
I mean, like I would say, y'all, some of y'all got hit records in your computer already, but you never took it to the right engineer. Had you taken it to the right engineer, you'd be out of here. You didn't need to change the song. You didn't need to change the beat. Didn't need to change the flows. The song was already perfect. All you needed was the right engineer. That brings me to my point of development and your point to the award show. But go ahead.
So we're saying 1999 was the last great Dr. Dre album end to end that he produced. Is that what we're saying?
What's the last album that he produced in the end? I'm not counting the Marsha Ambrosius because I mean, Get Rich or Die Trying. He kind of did spot production on those.
He did a lot on Relapse, I think. Was it Relapse or was it Recovery? He did a lot of records on an Eminem.
Just don't count.
Eminem
What
is
you mean they don't count? He produced the joint.
No, I'm just saying they're not good. It is what it is. They're not all-time great produced records. They should count, but they count negatively. Yes.
When you watch a movie and the sound is not good, you're like, the movie's okay. Then when you watch the same movie and the sound is good, it feels like a totally new movie.
This is my thing. I agree with what you're saying, Leroy, and I think that's why we hold him so high. Where I think the thing is missing in hip hop, one of the biggest things and one of the core things about hip hop producers and production is that creativity to be able to either find the next sound or find the next loop that is going to be used over and over, or that loop from another genre that you could flip and make it into a hip hop thing. Dre is low on those points. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, what's the last dope loop that you think Dre really found and dug up? I would have to go back to like Chronic Doggy Style type days. And from what I understand, he didn't even find that loop for California Love. I gave him credit for that loop for Super Ugly for a long time. That's a dope ass loop. That's the type of stuff I'm talking about. Like, I would love to hear Dr. Dre give us that next sound in that way. Now, him being an engineer and all of that, yeah, him being able to take your beat, like we know with Daz or whatever, and take it to the next level, he has that gift. But that's like diminishing, DJ Premier's engineering skill set, because he does all of those things himself.
Again, y'all want him to go find original beats. I understand that because you want to hear something new. I think in Dre's mind, his gift is making things sound better, not going to find original. So where
does that leave him when it comes to being a hip hop producer then? Because what's more important in hip hop production?
I'm not going to put purely producing over engineering. I cannot, because we wouldn't get no finished product if it wasn't for the engineers. And it wouldn't even sound as good as it sounds. All that classic stuff we call classic, it was an engineer making that sound crisp, y'all.
So you feel like Bruce Sweeten's more important than Quincy Jones in the Off the Wall and Thriller sessions?
Well, Mike, you may be a little bit more informed on that dynamic. I'm just
I'm just saying that's the engineer and producer.
The way hip hop underplays the value of sound is crazy.
I don't think we do that. I don't think we do that.
None of us care about engineers. None of us care about engineers in hip hop.
Bob Power is important to Tribe Called Quest.
We don't care how the music sounds. We just want
to. The low end theory is based on that. Like the low end theory, and we know Bob Power because of the low end theory and his work with the Tribe Called Quest. He's incredibly important as an engineer.
The sound is so crucial. Like I said, man.
Let me get to the super chat. Jay Short says, Jay Short with the $20 super chat showing love. He says, to me, DJ Premier is the GOAT hip hop producer. First, he was the best during hip hop's most competitive time. Second, look at top 20 rappers, and a lot of their best songs are produced by DJ Premier. I think that's a great point. Because really, if we want to talk about when would you say rap music was the most competitive? Let's go there. Let's start there when we're talking about hip hop producers. When was hip hop the most competitive?
When it probably had the most money to gain. So we're talking about
96 to 2000.
I wouldn't even say 96, because in 96 you were still making music just because you kind of wanted to make it. It wasn't like
I don't know about that.
It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna get so rich because I made this song. Like,
no, I think All Eyes on Me kind of changed those things. I think, to be honest, I would say 95 to 98, because we're talking about Bad Boy, Death Row, Pac, Big, Jay coming in. Then the West Coast, you know what I'm saying, still being a player in the game. New York trying to come back, the South coming through and showing that they got something to prove. Yeah, I think that's where I would say is the most competitive era. And mid-90s, who's the best producer in hip-hop? DJ Premier, right?
If artists that dropped their first album in the mid-90s, I don't think that's very competitive because your first album is you walking in the door. You don't have a bunch of power in the music industry just walking into the front door. So you can't be that competitive without the power. You know what I mean?
Who was just walking in the door? I think DMX was very competitive from jump. He's a different case, though, because he's been around.
Yeah, but Def Jam is a very important machine in hip-hop. So if I'm DMX and I'm standing next to Jay on one side and I got an album coming out with Jay, DMX and Jay and Ja Rule had an album that they were working on called Murder Inc. It's not alleged. It's a they had songs.
They did a whole XXL cover. Somebody talk to Ja Rule about that. I want to know the inside about how far that actually went, or was that just a photo shoot? Were there actual songs that were, and not just the songs that we heard, were there actual songs that were archived that they were working on? Jermaine Johnson with the super chat says Drake could body almost any producer in a verses without even touching his NWA catalog. I think that's kind of true too. Boy Visibility with the super chat says you have to appreciate how DJ Premier was able to make Group Home actually sound good on record. No disrespect, but Makai and Nutcracker has to be one of the worst MCs of all time. Makai and Nutcracker has to be one of the worst MCs of all time. Jay Short with another super chat says, as much as I hate to agree with Leroy, I do think hip hop misses good engineering. However, I would never say you're the GOAT producer until you can name me someone else who couldn't produce Rakim. Yeah, what do you say about that? What do you say about the fact that Dr. Dre wasn't able to produce Rakim or Eve?
Okay. So with that, now first point I'm gonna make real quick is imagine if that Group Home album and Moment of Truth had Dr. Dre as the engineer, how those albums sound way different, and it's the same beats. But what to your point, wait, what was the question you just asked? What do I say to what now?
What would you say to people who say that Dr. Dre couldn't produce Rakim?
Oh, okay. So Rakim, right? You have a mathematical flow. What I mean by that, and this is not a diss, because everything
because you said that Dr. Dre can improve everything.
Diss now. Everything's a diss. What I mean by that is Rakim, he's landing on particular numbers in his flow, right? So you're landing with him as the producer. Now we'll take someone like a Lupe Fiasco. He's all over the place. He's landing on a different spot almost every bar. So now you have much more room as a producer. Dr. Dre has a mathematical space with Rakim because Rakim is going to end his line in the same similar spots. Da da da. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. He's landing in the same spot. So that doesn't always work for a producer all the time. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes the music feels a little mechanic or predictable because you're landing in the same spot. And that's why it didn't work.
He wasn't able to produce for Nas or Raekwon either, but
Nas is landing in a similar spot. Where does
Dre need you? Where does Dre need you to land? Where Eminem does?
Because Nas is coming on. It Was Written could have been taken out, and then the Firm records didn't really land like that. So he's got a couple misses, right?
We don't acknowledge his misses.
You can make great songs like Rakim and Dre. They may have a dope ass album that we just never heard, and when they listen back to it, they just feel like there are elements missing, and that's why it didn't come out. So it doesn't have to be that the music was so terrible or it couldn't happen. Maybe they just feel like there's some things missing from what they created.
Well, I'm not going to romanticize of how great it probably is that we never heard. I think the fact that, like Mike D from the Beastie Boys said, there's a reason why things are unreleased. Wasn't good enough. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to romanticize on the fact that Andre 3000 probably has a bunch of solo record material with 3 verses. He doesn't have it out there. It doesn't exist. And the Dr. Dre and Rakim stuff doesn't exist. What we do know is those guys had studio sessions and they recorded some stuff, allegedly. But what we also know is it never came out. And I just don't think it was good enough. And I think that who misses that opportunity? And Dr. Dre is clearly influenced by Rakim and his flow. He's the greatest MC of all time. And Dr. Dre being the person that many people feel like is the greatest hip hop producer of all time. How does nothing come out of that?
So Mike, I trust that you would have, looking at the bracket, you would have RZA over Dr. Dre, you have Primo over Dr. Dre, and you have Kanye over Dr. Dre. Is that a fair assessment?
I don't have RZA over Dr. Dre, and RZA made some of my favorite beats ever. So I think that I would still put Dr. Dre over RZA. On a personal list, I'd pick RZA, just my personal taste if I'm picking beats, but it's hard for me to say that RZA, because of that sample size of what he did between 93 and let's just say essentially 97 overtakes Dr. Dre in his illustrious career. I can't say that. I personally like, on the flip side, I personally like Dr. Dre's production more than Premier, but I could make a case for saying that as a hip hop producer and as somebody who is, we know made all his stuff himself, we know has always stayed true to the hip hop aesthetic and whose engineering is super underrated. I think there could be a case for Premier to be over Dre. Dre got them hit records over Premier, though.
It's DJ Premier, so DJ Premier is DJ Premier. Like we're acting like these people aren't who they are. Like, and there's a lot of that going on with DJ Premier. They're like, we don't know about DJ Premier, and I was like, you're acting like DJ Premier is not who he is. Like, I don't understand. Yeah. But it's like, but again, everyone go try to make an album, but land in the same spot for the whole album.
I think where Dre excels is the fact that he's an incredible album maker among his peers. But on the flip side, he has a lot more help than his peers too. Like, who would you say is DJ Premier's production partner? Ain't no Elizondo around DJ Premier. Ain't no Daz around DJ Premier like that. So he's operating on a different level. And even with RZA, we at least got mathematics and, we got people that we know that are dope that are around RZA. I don't know any of the producers around Premier like that.
You're not on a different level because you made a beat by yourself and Dre made a beat with 6 other people. That don't make you on a different level.
I think that gives you a different consideration. I mean, I really do. I mean, that's like when we talk about KD3 from Nas. Like, that shit is a whole solo mission.
But then we're going back to the argument about what is a producer, though. So producer is not, what's the difference between a producer and a beat maker? Now, if we're going to put Dr. Dre in the beat maker box, then you say, okay, the edge goes to other producers. But you're talking about a producer, someone who gets a song and takes sounds and crafts a song out of, compiling different pieces together from the strings to the drum loops to the kits to the samples to the mix. Then you have to put Dr. Dre in a different category, All
right, well, this is my thing. And I think what we've done in hip hop, and we break things down to kind of elevate certain people in their strong points. To be perfectly honest, just like we talk about what's a lyricist and who's a rapper, what's an MC and what's a rapper and all that. If you're a beat maker in hip hop, you got to be a producer too. You know what I'm saying? Like, to say that Daz didn't have to produce in his career and he's a beat maker is dishonest. Like, he had to produce on the Dog Pound stuff. And even if you didn't think you were having to produce, you had to mix down this stuff. You had to separate vocals. You had to kick over these tracks. You had to get tracks to the right person that you had them in mind for. Now, some people might do more of the arranging side of it, but you had to find your engineer. You had to do all of the things that a producer does, even if somebody considers you a beat maker. There's never been anybody who's on this bracket where they had the luxury of just saying, I'm going to make a beat, pass it off, everybody else do all the work. No, that doesn't happen. So there really is no difference between the producer and beat maker in hip hop. You have to be both. Now, in other genres, you can be a producer without being a beat maker, but I don't think you could be a beat maker in hip hop without having to do some production work.
from what I hear in hip hop, honestly speaking, for the last generation or so, I think a lot of beat makers just make the beat and call it a day. Production means
like who? I don't think so. You can't do that.
I'm saying the majority of albums I hear, I think the artist just got the beat, rapped over it, and they said the song was done. Because I don't hear the relation like to the changes. When the artist changes flow, the beat changes. When something, I don't hear the relation. That's production. Like you make the beat, then get the vocals, then go back in and recreate the beat around the vocals. That's production. I don't hear that a lot.
Jay Short with the super chat says, what is this? Rapping over DJ Premier was a rite of passage in the 90s, in the early 2000s. He was the litmus test, the final boss. I agree with that. Like when people saw DJ Premier track on your album, that meant like, yo, I'm about to get on some rap shit. It is what it is. It was kind of like a street single type of situation. And not many people can say that they made great records for Biggie, Jay, Nas, all in their prime. I mean, not many people can say that. DJ Premier has a unique resume when it comes to that, and say that they made some of the great albums that they made with Gang Starr with his own group.
We like Primo because it's minimalistic. It's not 10 different instruments going on at once. We
like Dre because
we like Dre because he's not minimalistic, because it's a bunch of shit going on at once. So these are two different ends of the spectrum.
I'm going to say it like this. Man. And Dre has more than Q-Tip, but just from a talent standpoint, and if we're looking at a talent in a vacuum, you tell me who's the more talented producer between the two, give me Q-Tip, man. Because I know Q-Tip's going to go out there and find some loop that I never thought was going to be able to be flipped and used in this way.
I got it.
And Jay Dilla is a very underrated engineer as well. Are we going to look at Jay Dilla as a beat maker? He's a producer too.
I'm going to look at Jay Dilla as the middle ground between Dre and Q-Tip because Dilla is taking a sample and then making the sample sound completely on some other different stuff.
Jay has a question for you, Leroy, with the super chat. He says, Leroy, you said Dr. Dre could not produce for Rakim because he had a mathematical flow. Then why hasn't Dr. Dre produced anything classic with Kendrick Lamar, whose flow's the opposite?
I didn't say Dr. Dre can't produce for Rakim. I think if Dr. Dre wanted to make Rakim a beat, he could crank that out. So I didn't say he can't do that. I'm saying they probably made music and they listened back to it. When they listened back to it, they was like, it's all right. And they wasn't really moved like how maybe you would expect them to be moved. And that's okay.
Hey, real quick, do you guys find it odd that when people have these greatest ever conversations that everyone that the mainstream media says is the greatest falls under one umbrella, Interscope? So when they say who's the greatest producer, they say Dr. Dre, Interscope, right? Who's the greatest rapper? Some would say Eminem, right? Well, we don't, but some people say Eminem. It falls under Interscope, right? Who's the newest greatest rapper? They say Kendrick, Interscope. Don't you find it odd that all this greatest stuff comes under one umbrella? It's kind of strange.
Well, they got a lot of great artists. Yeah, I mean, I'm not taking anything away from that.
I just find it strange. That's all. I'm just calling out. I'm just calling it out. It just looks quite out. It's not a coincidence, is it? It's just weird.
And it's business. And to your point about the award show, for this year, instead of calling songs, let's call them businesses. Because a song is a business. That's you license a song out, you treat it as a business, and you are the business owner who gets full control of your song or pieces of it. So your songs are businesses. So when we look at products, right? Why is Nissan involved in an artist or whatever? So you got to go into your own garage, right? You got to say, why do I drive the car that I drive? Why do I have the phone that I have? Why do I have the clothes that I have? And then you start looking at products that you support, right? So take the products that you support, then take your music and find the middle ground, because it is business. So the award shows I do think are necessary. The businesses I do think are necessary, because I'm not just looking at the award show, and I missed it last night, but I'm just not looking at award show, I'm looking at the artist at the award show. So the artist has to be able to operate in artist capacity. So that's why we need these type of shows, because I've been a fan of Victoria Monet before people really knew who she was, because I'm a fan of writers. So it's time for her to get her just due, because she's been around for a long time. So
is an award show getting your just due now? I guess my
Yeah.
question to you would be, why do we really need these award shows around still?
So someone like a Victoria Monet can emerge. You know what I mean? Not to say she wasn't already there, not to say she wasn't already successful, but people knew her in the background. They didn't know her face, they didn't know her songs, they didn't know her voice. But now in an award show, now you see her face, you see her show, you see her, and that's why it's important. You know,
it's intention. I listen.
Yeah.
When I say hit the reset button, I sit there and think about what made Motown want to do what they were doing, right? There were no award shows for the Supremes, or you know what I'm saying, or the Temptations to look at and say, look, I want to be on that stage one day. No, they were just doing that thing because they loved it. And I think that if you hit the reset button on, look, we don't need these people on TV like that, it's really no use for it like that, maybe people will start actually genuinely making music and material because they want to actually make that music, not because they want to be on a red carpet somewhere, or not because they want to get some attention, or they want to see what they can do to go viral, this, that, and the third. Just hit the reset button. Ain't no BET Awards, ain't no clearly ain't no Source Awards, and let's just see what happens. And we can weed out the people who are here for nefarious purposes. And if you really love music, and you really love the craft, and you really love what you're doing and want to make a career out of this, then we're going to see who really wants to do this, as opposed to seeing who wants to be seen on the red carpet.
I mean, that's the games and the games didn't change, Mike. I mean that way. I mean, that's never going back to the way it used to be. The award shows are dead, and I don't even think the artists really want to be on the red carpet like that.
No, I'm saying I get that. I mean, I do think
because you got social media now. You don't need the red carpet to be visible. If you got a million followers,
yes and no. I think that once you get past that level or whatever, I think yes, then you'll probably never go back to an award show. But if you're somebody who, let's just say Sexy Red, for example, love bringing her up on the show. She's a great litmus test for a lot of stuff. She'll go out there and do whatever to go viral real quick, but her getting on a BET Awards based on its legacy and based on the corporate structure of BET, her being on that stage is some level of validation. Same thing for Ice Spice. Their people are going to make them go to that because that's that next step. Now, will they go to the award show after that? Probably not.
Probably not.
But it's still there for even that person that's getting social media attention to be that next step. Like, yo, I'm not just a social media person. I'm on another level. I'm on BET or whatever.
That's what
I think that's there for that. But again, if you take that away and there's no other level to get, just go out there and who really wants to make the music.
There'll be something else. There'll be Rolling Loud. There'll be Art Basel.
You got to perform though.
There'll be the festivals instead of the award shows. The award
I'm fine with that. I'm cool with the festivals because you know what? Now you have a buying public that came to see a show and came to see a performance, and now you got to show and prove.
The artists in hip hop, they think I'm gonna go out here by myself and take over music all by myself because I'm popular on social media. In their mind, that makes sense. The reality is you're not coming out here by yourself and doing all that. So these award shows, the reason why there's so many people in the room is because behind the artist, there's a whole team that's making things happen. And for an artist to think that you're going to do that on your own, great. You know, I wish the best you could try that. But most that think they're going to do it on their own are not, because there are too many moving parts in the music business.
And even if you are talented enough to do a lot on your own, you're going up against people with full teams. And you're not, and we've seen this in sports, one person's not going to be the team.
One person.
Jermaine Johnson with the super chat says, RZA, is a unique level of producing because he didn't just make music for a ready-made group. He also A&R, created, orchestrated the group, actually produced, invented what we know as Wu-Tang. I agree. He is very unique. And I think that even for his work with just that one collective, we hold him super high for that.
Well, we're talking RZA, right?
What's that?
We're talking about the RZA?
Yeah.
Now, the RZA, great producer. We would never say that he's not a great producer. Can you imagine RZA's beats with Dr. Dre engineering them?
No,
like,
I cannot.
That would blow your mind out of your eardrum. You know what I'm saying?
But I don't even want to hear Dr. Dre. I want to hear RZA's beats to how they sound. I think I want to hear the grit. I want to hear the grain. I want to hear the imperfections of the records. I don't want to hear RZA's music polished like that. I just don't need to hear that. You know,
it's kind of like the 36 Chambers versus Wu-Tang Forever argument, where it's like Wu-Tang Forever is clearly more polished. They're clearly better MCs on Wu-Tang Forever, but it's something about 36 Chambers that's just dirty and gritty that makes it better than Wu-Tang Forever.
Okay, so KD3, we all like KD3. Now take the same music, nothing changes, same beats, same rhymes. Only difference is Dr. Dre engineers. That album sounds on a totally different level.
My fear with that, and I'm being real here, Leroy. My fear with that is Dr. Dre has a tendency to overproduce. Now, you're talking about him just taking on the engineering responsibilities, but what project did he just take on the engineering responsibilities and that's it? He always is going to have some level of a hand in production, and I feel like there are moments of KD3 that are overproduced in my estimation. I think that moment on Reminisce, we didn't need that in part, in my opinion. But I think that if Dr. Dre was in the fold, would have had more of that kind of stuff. And sometimes when you rock it with a great beat and you got a great flow going on, just keep that shit. It's cool. You ain't got to always change up here, always change up here, change up the cadence here. No, man, like, that's what rhythm is. That's what soul is. Like when James Brown, we're going to take it to James Brown because he's the core of all this shit. When James Brown had a great rhythm going and a great rhythm section going, he wasn't going to sit here and change up the funk and that was going on. He kept that shit going. And that's okay. But I think that sometimes we get caught up in so many technicalities and the techniques of these things that, you know, we lose the soulfulness in it. Tater Tots with a super chat says, Joel and Crooked dropped their 6th and final project, all classic material. They're the only rappers you actually want to hear rap and pick up good beats with drums. Yo, Leroy has been singing the praises of this project. I still haven't gotten the opportunity to listen to it. I'm gonna go listen tomorrow for sure.
I just been saying Crooked I is a dope rapper. We all all know that, right? I mean, I'm not saying nothing new. We know that, right? He's Crooked I killing it. He's a dope rapper. And we're going to talk about just rapping because what we do subconsciously is we do put popularity over rap. Most of our lists are hip-hop lists, meaning HIPPOP. They're hip-hop. They're not hip-hop. Because if it was purely about rapping, we'd be in a different state. If we were just let's make it all about skills. It ain't about skills. It's about how famous we think you are. That's how we judge your music.
Well, let me ask you this. Why do you think, and we talk about skills, and to me, we just talk about skills in a vacuum, there's not many people I can say are more skilled lyrically than Lupe Fiasco. Lupe has had a very long career. He has a dope album out right now with Samurai, which I think is an album of the year contention in hip hop. And he's kind of on a roll because he's dropped a dope project, before this as well. And Lupe quietly is on a real, nice little run he has going on. Why do you think that many people don't just put Lupe in their top 20 and it just doesn't roll off the tongue like that?
Because again, they're going to pick someone who is more popular than Lupe and say, well, this person's more popular. It must mean they're better. Because that makes sense, right? If you're more popular, you got to be better. That makes sense in their mind. Lupe, to me, I can make an argument almost virtually against anyone with Lupe. But to everyone take your top 10 list, right? Or top, I'm going to go 10. I'm going to go there. Everyone take your top 10 list. We're not going to speak on Jay. We're not going to speak on Nas, Pac, or Big. Everybody take all the other rappers in that list. So is it safe to say that a lot of y'all got Ghostface on your list?
I got Ghost on my list.
I got Ghost on my list, yeah.
To say that a lot of y'all think Ghost is a top 10, top 12 person, right?
Top 15 for sure.
Okay, so you could and y'all could throw out any names y'all want. It don't matter, right? So Lupe, we're gonna run it down. The first time you saw Lupe appear, it was on Touch the Sky with Kanye West. Kanye West is a big deal, right? Was in your mind, is that a hit record, Touch the Sky?
For sure.
So boom, this is how Lupe walks in the door on a hit record. Second, he drops
let me stop you there though. I'm gonna stop you there. I'm gonna play devil's advocate.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Lupe's not really the star on Touch the Sky, though, is he? It's not like a breakthrough scenario type of moment. Sure.
He's just
it's a dope verse, Mike.
It's a dope verse.
And people will check when he comes in, it does change the tenor of the record a little bit. I ain't going front on that. You know what I'm saying?
No, I'm not saying he didn't deliver and didn't do his thing, but I think
Kanye is the star.
Quotables on there is I've been having nervous breakdowns. Like, damn, these niggas that much better than me. Like,
I mean, yeah, it's a
Kanye got a lot of personality, and I think for Lupe's skill set and how skilled he is and how great he is as an MC, to get your first look with probably one of the most personable and biggest personalities in rap.
Right.
I mean, you could get overshadowed by that Kanye personality in the way that he delivers.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I mean, I wish I didn't have to mention these things. But I have to mention fame because people associate skill with fame. So I have to give you famous Lupe so you respect Lupe. So I'm just giving you famous hallmarks, right? Of him being famous. Hey, I'm famous. Everyone look at me. So he's on a song with Kanye West. The verse was dope. Second, he dropped Kick Push. Do I have to explain why Kick Push is a classic song, or does everybody know that?
Do you think Kick Push is a classic, Ron?
I can see how Leroy considers it a classic one. I think a classics doesn't come to register in my mind as one, but it's a dope record. I'm not taking nothing away from Lupe, but I don't, go ahead, Leroy. Go ahead, Leroy.
If you don't consider it a classic, that's okay. I consider it a classic because there are certain criteria that I view a classic in.
It's for sure important for his era.
Yeah,
Mike, throw it back to you. Do you think it's a classic? You asked me. What do you think?
No, I don't.
Okay, go ahead, Leroy.
No, yeah, I'm not asking people to think the same way, right? But I think it's a classic because it speaks to a world of skateboarding. So skateboarding in this culture and hip hop and American culture, they cross, right? We don't. If any of ever you grew up and picked up a skateboard, then you might relate to Kick Push. So that's one. Kick Push, it made its wave. Then he drops Daydreaming. Daydreaming wins a Grammy. So again, we're going to be famous again. I want to go. Yeah. He won a Grammy. Now the song is beautiful. Do I have to talk about skills with Lupe, or do we kind of know that? Because if this man is saying it's hoes by the toes, it's hoes selling hoes around the toes, crackheads beg around the lower legs, crooked police stationed at the knees that do drive-bys up and down the thighs. There's a car chase going on around the waist with a vest on my chest. I'm sitting in my room as I'm looking out the face, something to write about. I still got some damage from fighting the White House. Do we understand how ridiculous that is?
Yeah. Right. Hey, let me read this from Ron Vay real quick. This is shout out to Ron Vay. He's got on our other show, Around the Culture, that we do. Comes out every Thursday. Two dope dads. This rap. He has a question for you, Leroy. He says, there's more to being a dope MC than just skills outside of popularity, charisma, style, ability to move the crowd, songwriting ability, etc. DMX isn't as quote unquote skilled as Lupe, but he's a better MC. What say you, Leroy, to my guy Vay's my guy's Vay's assessment of Lupe in the paradigm of hip hop?
I think Lupe is a performance terrorist. I think if you've ever seen Lupe perform, you've gone into it thinking one thing. When he gets off that stage, you realize you just saw a beast. You just saw a beast. Someone who's jumping off the speakers, running around, going crazy, doing 8 minutes of a mural, just going crazy. Lupe is a different kind of animal on a stage. So I don't know if he's DMX, but again, we always take another person and say, well, what about this person? I'm not talking about DMX. I'm talking about Lupe. You know what I mean?
Well, you did mention MCs first.
Lupe his touring career is legendary. We don't know about it because we're not checking to see what Lupe's doing. If we did though, his touring history is legendary around the world. Like for years.
I will say this. I'm gonna say this. I think that, you know, for Lupe's era and his skill set, and I mean, I think he's an incredible lyricist, like on a Black Thought incredible lyricist level. I think that his longevity is gonna be, you know, it's gonna hold him higher in history as time goes on. I think when we think of things in the moment, he might not register as high as some of the people who had moments like the DMXs, like a Prodigy and guys like that. But I think when we look at the long run of it all, it might be a whole different conversation. And that's why it's very important that he is coming with the efforts that he's coming with now. So nobody can look back. Nobody in good conscience can sit there and say, yo, man, Lupe ain't the MC that he was on the Cool. Can't say that.
Yeah, I mean, some try to say that, and I understand.
You can't say that. The way he's rapping, like, you can't really say that.
Because they look at it as different. They look at one must be better than the other because it's different. So it's like, again, and I hate to do it, but if Jay makes 444 and people think about American Gangster, they're going to say, well, American Gangster must be a better rapping because it's, you know, he must be rapping better than. But 444 is nothing like American Gangster. So you're comparing two things that have nothing to do with each other, other than the same guy.
I mean, I just think on a quality level, American Gangster just has better songs than 444, in my opinion.
Samurai and the Cool have nothing to do with each other. So if people,
the same person made them though, and I think that it's just like comparing. It's like comparing Jordan from '88 to Jordan in '93. You know what I'm saying? Like there's some takeaways that you could get from both of those. That same guy in both of those different time spans, and certain things are different. Certain things are less. Certain things are more. Like he doesn't have the athleticism in '96, '97 that he had in '88. But the court awareness, his ability to utilize his teammates, his ability to score with his back to the basket.
I understand.
So it's like there are some additives there, and that's where the comparisons come in at, really to kind of to highlight the growth. You know what I'm saying? And that's where that comparison with what Lupe's making now, as opposed to what he was making previously, comes in at. And I see growth in him. I see growth in him. I see growth in Black Thought. I see growth in Nas. Even if I feel like the 96 Nas is the best MC I've ever heard in a vacuum, I still see growth in the material that he's making now as opposed to what he was making in 96. He does some things better now than he did then.
But we got to take concept into account though. What will happen is people they'll look at an album like Samurai and completely forget Amy Winehouse has anything to do with the delivery. So then they'll listen to it and be like, why is he singing like that? And they'll say, oh, this is so trash. They completely throw the concept completely out the window. So when you don't keep in mind concept, you're not listening the way that it was intended for you to listen. You know, that's the only thing I'm saying. So in that degree, someone will be like, he's not rapping like how he was on the Cool. Well, you're right. He's not, because the concept doesn't fit that, you know?
Well, I think we do have two different type of listeners on that. You have listeners who are just going to take certain music for face value. And then you have listeners that are going to really, really dig into the material and start analyzing it and breaking it down. Same thing with film. Like people who are really into movies, they're going to go back and look at a movie over and over again and try to pick up on some things that they didn't see the first time. Now, a pedestrian film watcher like myself, I'm just going to watch it on the... Now, if it's good enough, I'm going to go back and do that, or entertaining enough, I'm probably going to do that. but I don't view films in the way that I view music. And I'm sure there are people who don't, listen to music in the way they view films, vice versa. Everybody has their thing, but you're right. It's two different listeners there. Jay Short with the $20 super chat showing love. He says, I know this may be way out of left field, but why does Lupe's album covers almost never have his face on it? They're mostly artwork. Psychologically, that creates a disconnect when you don't see the face to go with the music.
Now, Chili's son drew this picture on Samurai. But do you know that Lupe is actually a real painter and he has a painting career? Do y'all know that?
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Legit painter. Like, he has real paintings up in, like, he's a painter.
That's a good point that Jay Short made, but I think, that's only part of it, because you look at Kanye West's album covers, he doesn't put his face on his album covers. It's mostly artwork or a photo of the bear, Late Registration, College Dropout, and you got Yeezus, and you got Life of Pablo.
I was thinking about that too. Yeah.
So, and he connects with audiences around the world, but it's just a different approach. But you got a good point there, Short.
To Jay Short's point, and to play devil's advocate on what you said, Ryan, Kanye is also a very visual artist too. Like, when you look at his music videos, especially in the day where he was doing those things, he was able to add a very cinematic aesthetic to his visuals that went with his music. So I think him not being on the album cover was more so compensated based on what he put into those visuals.
I mean, I think artists, when they know that you know what they look like, I don't think it matters at that particular point. Like, Lupe knows that you know what he looks like, so,
But
go ahead, Ron. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask you and Leroy this question, right? So, we established, I established my top 10. Mike, you established your top 10. Leroy, you have Lupe firmly in the top 10. Where do we put Lupe? Where is he? Is he top 20, top 25? Is he even top 50? Because I would argue in the group chat I sent y'all today, I would say most people, if you go on the street and say, is Lupe top 25? Most people would say no. If you say, is Lupe in your top 20? Most people would say no. So where do y'all comfortably put Lupe in the grand scheme of things?
You're asking the chat, or you? Because
I'm asking the chat. I'm asking the chat for one, and I'm asking you second. I already know where you go. I'm asking you third because I already know where you stand. I'm asking you, Mike. I'm asking you second.
I'm first. Okay.
Yeah.
Based on what Lupe's been able to do over the past 5-6 years, I'm comfortable with having Lupe in a top 25 conversation. I think that the digital era is an interesting era. And I think that would be the title of this episode, man. Like, music has changed, and music start changing right when Lupe came in the door. His timing was basically when we were transitioning from actual physical copies to digital copies. And a lot of people didn't last that transition, and they didn't translate well over into that next era that no longer was buying music. And I think that Lupe's done a very good job of transitioning over into that era and making himself matter to his audience and continuously making quality music through that. And I think it's something to be said about that. People like him, Currency, and I'm not putting him and Currency on that same level. I'm just talking about people who were there through that transition. And he's continuously making music that looks and sounds like who he is and continuously developing his skill set. And a lot of people in our hip hop top 25, you really don't notice this until you start writing the list out, didn't really last past their era. And so I have to give him credit for being able to do that and being able to be the guy who broke down the barrier for a guy like a Kendrick Lamar specifically to be able to fly in the way that he has. We have to understand, man, when Lupe came in the door, he was co-signed by Jay-Z, Kanye West. He was a big deal, at least, and that was all based on his skill and his talent. It wasn't quote unquote marketability, no disrespect, or street credibility or anything like that, or him getting the streets hot. they knew how talented of an MC he was. And all those big guns got all in on deck with dude. And he's been able to prove over time to him and his audience, or to his audience and just the rest of the game, that he deserved that adoration. So yeah, I think that we could look at him as top 25. Now, does he have a top 30, 50 album all time? Like I said, the music industry's changed, and we're not going to view those albums that came out in the digital era in the same way that we did the ones in the physical era, because it's just different and it's hard to really compare the two. But I do think that he can get top 25 consideration. Saying all that to say.
Yeah, and Leo, before you go, I got Lupe somewhere in the top 25, 30. Between 25 and 30. I got to sit down and do an exhaustive list, and maybe I'll put it out in a few weeks, a couple months, over my top 50 MCs. But I got Lupe 25 or 30. But I did go back and listen to Samurai today, and I will say he was cooking up on that. He was cooking up on that. That bar work on Samurai is next level. So I give him his props. So I'm not shading Lupe. I'm not saying anything derogatory toward Lupe's skill set. That bar work on Samurai is some next level shit. And I've heard a lot of albums this year. From a flow perspective, from a lyricism perspective, that shit was top notch. But go ahead, Leroy. I know you got him in the top 10. You can kind of explain why. Before we close it, before you go, I want you to kind of give your assessment on Lupe, where he fits in the paradigm. And before we get out of here, I want to talk about Will Smith's performance, Mike, from last night, real quick.
Okay.
Cool. So again, bar work. Do you realize how crazy it is? We're talking about rap music, and I'm not even going to put lyricism on the table for Lupe, because if I put lyricism on the table for Lupe, it's going to blow out so many rappers that there's not going to be much of a list left. So I can't even put lyricism, because Lupe is so far ahead in that realm that we're like, I only scratched the surface of Samurai, and people were like, you did a great breakdown. If I really broke down Samurai or any of his albums, we'd be here for 3 or 4 hours. Y'all.
I think you should do that on a weekend for sure.
But that's how that's when we talk about lyricism, it's not too many rappers that I'm talking bar for bar that are going to equate to a Lupe Fiasco. I mean, it's not going to happen. That's going to take care of 95% of it. All you guys list right there. Just on bar work, rap music. So we're talking about the art of rapping. His latest album, I didn't even have to use wordplay. I could take all the wordplay out. I could take all the concepts out. I could take all the highs, lyrical miracles out, and just go on flow. He may have used 100 flows on Samurai. You could take the music off Samurai and it just be a cappella, and you'd still be able to hear the rhythm of his delivery.
His dedication to lyricism is, is well appreciated for sure.
So I can't even use lyricism because it's too far ahead of everyone for me to try that. So that's one. I'm gonna go back to where he's at. After he dropped Daydreaming, he got a Grammy. I'm taking care of the Fame box and Acclaim box. All right. Then he dropped Superstar. Superstar goes platinum. I'm taking away the platinum box. He dropped something else that went platinum too, or his album went platinum. The Cool. I'm taking away the platinum box. I mean, Battle Scars went diamond. That's 10 million sold. Okay, so I'm taking away the popularity has been gone. And that was because the feature artist he did that with came in with huge fan base from Australia. So, but it happens, right? So he's famous. He got the fame box. He got the popularity box. He got the Grammy box. He has the lyrical box, and he has the platinum selling box. Now let's go into albums, right? The Cool, the Food and Liquor, The Cool, even Lasers, because that has groundbreaking songs on it. The label didn't want to put it out or give him a release date for it, so they had a protest to give him a release date. Lupe not having a release date caused a protest. That's a movie. And then Anonymous, the group, told the label, we're going to air you guys out if you don't give him a release date. Leroy Cohen gave him a release date like within 24 hours. So that is a whole movie in itself right there. So The Cool, conceptual writing. Tetsuo and Youth. When we all heard Mural, I know that some of us were like, this can't be life. Somebody rapping, this man's gonna rap for 8 minutes like that's regular with no hook. He's just gonna just be rapping like that's normal.
Yeah.
So it's like there are so many back now originality. Look, Lupe was rapping about making buildings into robots, rapping about resurrected drug dealers as ghosts, rapping there's slaves that were pulling down slave ships, you know what I mean, as ghosts, rapping as objects, the Twilight thing, rapping the prisoner. He's not just rapping from the perspective of the prisoner, but also the prison guard. I mean, his lyrical genius is so far ahead of everyone. That's originality, you know. So there are boxes that Lupe checks that are just impossible for the competition to try to check those boxes. And his music is like 99.9% positive. I don't think he's gunned down anybody in his songs. I don't think he's, you know what I mean? I don't think he's making anybody look bad.
Well, Dr. Dre definitely wouldn't produce for him then.
So it's like, and if you want to battle Lupe, good luck. Good luck with that, because that's probably won't end well. You know, so he's challenged everyone. Lupe has repeatedly said, I will challenge anybody. If you want it, just bring it.
He's done that. He's made legends back down, and that's true. That's noted as well.
People don't want that smoke with Lupe, because what's going to happen when you call out that smoke? You're going to get more than you bargained for. So Lupe is checking boxes. That's ridiculous. The high level of these concepts. And again, I don't even have to use lyricism. His originality, he already checked the fame boxes. He already checked the album sold. But he has the classic albums. Does anyone here think he doesn't have classics? Okay. So it's like, now run down your top 10 people and run down your top 20. Are these people checking the same boxes I just laid out for Lupe?
See, we can start another show with that. Look, I gotta run real quick. I'll let you guys wrap up, but I want to let the people know I'm working on the list for Wednesday. It's gonna be the top 25 rap features on an R&B record, and I've been really, really working on this. I think y'all are gonna like this list, and it's gonna be slightly different than the feature list. No, spoiler alert. Jay-Z, Best to Me, and Biggie, Can't You See is on there because that was on the other list. So, but other than that, man, I think this is shaping up to be a really great list. I want to really work on getting you guys a list weekly. And we got some concepts that we've been throwing around because, I mean, the feedback's been good. The list seemed to be very credible because, you know, we're utilizing some of you guys' input to actually put these lists together. And I think that's what hip hop needs, is credible list out here. Because those are the things, we talk about award shows, I think those are the things that are going to make the next generation of creators have something to reach for. When you actually have credible lists that could say, yo, these are the best features. Okay, these are the best hooks or whatever. And these are standards. We're creating standards with that. So I'm putting together that list now, man. And I look forward to actually, you know, presenting it to you guys on Wednesday.
Fire.
Sir. Yeah, hit like and subscribe. Y'all continue to cook, Leroy, because Lupe deserves this.
Hey, sure. somebody sent this in the chat when Leroy was cooking about about Lupe. They said you was coming across like my man from a living color.
Yeah, sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes it's necessary.
Somebody said that Lupe coming.
Yeah, no doubt. But see, those characters exist in real life. Those characters really exist. I'm just saying.
Oh man, that was funny, man. Shout out to somebody who sent me that, man. My DMs, man. That was.
Yes. Lupe is the nerd. Yes. Lupe is the nerd. Right.
But it's all accurate. It's great.
I mean, those things matter, though. You know, it's like, it's corny, yes. But if we talked about artist development, right? So a lot of these artists, they're going to come in off the street. They got a pocket full of stones. They got some pistols on them. They got the gang with them. They ready to go tear some shit up because they're coming out of that environment. My job is to make sure that they survive long enough to get where they're trying to go. So if I have to give them an archetype or a model to follow, I think Lupe, not everyone's going to be able to follow that model, but I think Lupe is a pretty great model for where hip hop should go if for people who have the talent to do that. Now, granted, everyone doesn't have that talent, but for the ones that do, you know what I mean?
No doubt, no doubt. But yo, that was a good breakdown. We got some great reviews on Saturday night breaking down the Samurai album, man. I thought you did a wonderful job on that. But we're gonna close it out, man. Last night, Will Smith came back and to the scene. I mean, he's been doing some things lately. He did Hip Hop 50. He's made a couple of appearances here and there. He did a song on the Bad Boys 4 soundtrack, but he came out last night at the BET Awards and he put a record out on Friday. What was the name of that record? I think it was a positive joint. You Can Make It. I think Kirk Franklin's on that joint. What did you think about the record? Did you get a chance to listen to the record?
I did not. I looked it up as we were talking earlier, texting. So I didn't hear the record. You gotta put me up on that.
Yeah, the record was about, kind of trials and tribulations that he went through, the struggles. I wasn't really feeling the record, to be quite honest with you. If I'm gonna keep it a buck, I wasn't really feeling it. I really didn't like the performance. I've noticed that a lot of award shows, they do this like fire and brimstone type of deal, and it looks kind of dark and kind of satanic. Wasn't feeling the imagery behind that, but they've used that on a lot of award shows. It's like a common theme. They have the same producer or some shit. It's the same fire. It looks like the pits of hell. I wasn't feeling it. It wasn't me. He had the choir. He had Sunday service backing him. He had Kirk Franklin, and I don't know, man. Let us know in the chat what you think. I think Will Smith did have wanted to be in the pioneers of hip hop, really putting hip hop in the mainstream. He was integral in that. Much props to him and Jazzy Jeff. But this new record, the Bad Boys one he had with Sean Paul, that wasn't a dope one. Not really feeling this. I think in 2024, we might need to hear something else. He may need to get back with DJ Jazzy Jeff, really, to make a dope record. But I'm not really feeling this, man. But
yeah, I mean, if anybody he should work with anybody, it would be Jazzy Jeff, right? I mean, come on now, it's Jazzy Jeff. I mean, as far as the fire and brimstone, I don't know why they do stuff like that. I think it's just something to talk about. Like they know that we're gonna go talk about that after the fact. So I think that's a little different. It's a little strange, but it is what it is. Will Smith, I don't know. I don't know what the song is about. Is the song him saying that, hey, I'm Will Smith. I've been through some things. You've seen me go through things with my family. You've seen me go through things with the slap. You've seen me kind of go through a regression or some things with Hollywood. So that's basically what the song is supposed to be about, or something, or overcoming.
Yeah. That's what the song is about. So we got the comeback of the Fresh Prince. We'll take our tabs on it. Make sure you guys hit like and subscribe. It's very important. We talked about these dead award shows tonight, how they don't need to be resuscitated. Let's leave them out the pasture. They're done. Do not revive. We need to come up with some new concepts to really put our artists on. So every like you do, every comment you do, every time you share this with your friends, your homies, it really helps us out so we can build toward that According Hip Hop conference and festival. We do our own award shows and really celebrate the culture the way we want to celebrate it. So I appreciate everybody rocking with me, man. It's been a rough month, man. My wife was in the hospital. Then, some other family members in the hospital. Grandma departed. So it's a lot of rough times, man. And y'all have been saying, I ain't been sharp on standing on my square like that, but it's been tough. But we bring these shows to you, man. So I appreciate everybody. Mike D leading the charge, Leroy Green, Ron Vay. Our podcast is coming out Wednesday. We may go live during the day on Wednesday, so check this out. We may go on about noon or 1 o'clock. We'll see. And also we have the movie episode with Ron Vay coming out this week as well. So yeah, we'll be back Wednesday, man. We appreciate you rocking with us, man. As always, make sure you hit like and subscribe. I can't reiterate enough how important that is. Make sure you comment. We're trying to get to 100,000 followers. Once we get to 100,000 subscribers, we will have the vaults open up where we can do the hip hop festival, right? According to Hip Hop Festival. And a lot of folks in the comments and talk about numbers, man. We're also, I want to set the record straight, if you would allow me, Leroy, just for a second. YouTube is just one vehicle where we put our podcasts out, right? We also on X and also we're also on Meta on Facebook. So we average about 10,000, maybe 7,500, maybe 15,000. One video we had last week had 15,000 views all supported the people that's been rocking with us from day one. So the numbers may fluctuate, but we do it for the people. It's really not about the numbers. It's really about driving conversations. But I want to correct the record because a lot of folks that's, be chatty patties and try to hate on us saying our numbers ain't right. But, if we look at all the platforms, our numbers are what they are. Just wanted to talk that talk real quick. But anyway, as always, my name is Ron. That's Leroy. This is According to Hip Hop. Please hit like and subscribe. Make sure you rock with us and check with us on Wednesday, man. Peace.
Peace, y'all. Appreciate you. Till next time.